horror, sci-fi, memoir, fantasy, fiction, and much, much more on today's episode of the Story and Critique Show. Welcome to episode 30 of today's Critique Show, where we work with writers in the community. Writers will submit their story excerpts for a live reading and a live critique as we deep dive into them and we understand what are the things that we could really help improve of the story itself. So if you're wanting feedback on your story, submit right now down in the YouTube description down below, and we'll be starting very soon. Welcome to the Right Now community. I'm Kauffman, and I'm on a mission to help the unpublished writers of the world with the lifestyle, process, and mindset that it takes to be a writer, because I just love it that much. So come join the community because we're starting right now. All right, my friends. And by the way, if you're watching on the replay, I got you covered. After the stream ends, time codes are going to be added to the part of the stream, so that way you can hop to the critique that you loved listening to. You can hop to it, you can replay it as many times as you want to make it as easy as possible. So that is the key. Awesome. And before we hop into the guidelines, let's dive into the chat. Welcome, welcome. Hey, what's up, Bobby? Glad to see you here in the stream. You're bringing up like the beginning. You're like, hey, I'm going to get the first spot here. Absolutely love it, my friend. And ML, welcome, my friend. Masked Toaster, glad to have you in here. And LeMay, welcome, welcome. Laura, welcome back. Looking forward to reading your story. Super excited about it. Mass Toaster, let's see. Welcome, welcome, my friends. How is the writing going for everyone? You know what? Hopefully, going to make some progress. I haven't made as much progress on Scarecrow this week as I wanted, but Hakuna Matata. As life gets crazy, I will not stop working on this book till it gets published, till that's the last thing I do. So hopefully going to be making some more progress on it tomorrow. And Miss Tiara Talks Writing, welcome. By the way, I saw that you just submitted your submission for the Flash Fiction Contest. So stoked. Really stoked and really looking forward to it, Tiara. That's going to be really, really cool. You're like, Emma, like, it is going slowly, but I like what I wrote. So I guess that is a good thing. You're like, that's great. As long as we're making some type of progress, even if some weeks we might not be getting as much as other weeks, as long as we're pushing ourselves, right? And then we also have to be all right with giving ourselves the freedom to sometimes take a break. If life is crazy, just because you stop writing for a week doesn't mean that you're not a writer. Just because you stop writing for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, doesn't make you less of a writer. If you stop writing for a couple of years, might challenge it a little bit, but you know what? It's the mindset, because the mindset leads to the process and the lifestyle to write the stuff and tell your stories. All right, beautiful. I'm so looking forward to Freaky Friday. I know, my friends, I can't believe it. The Freaky Friday Flash Fiction competition is, the submission deadline is tomorrow, and the competition is now 2 weeks away. Less than 2 weeks away. I was like, make sure that I'm saying that right. Yep. The Freaky Friday and Spooky Saturday is less than 2 weeks away. And just so you guys know, we're actually going to be revealing a really cool surprise that we have lined up for the competition on Monday. So definitely make sure you tune into our Monday stream, because myself and Penelope have a cool announcement about the competition. But yes, so we'll advertise that in a little bit, but I'm very, very excited, my friends. Excellent. Hey, what's up, engineer? Glad to have you in the stream, my friend. All right, beautiful. So without further ado, let's get into it. And first off, I have to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Reaching the 500 subscriber milestone on YouTube. Finally unlocked the first set of monetization requirements for the YouTube Partner Program. It's not possible without all of you. So thank you for that. Thank you for showing up and thank you for sharing it and helping us just grow the community. As such, the first requirement that I was able to unlock was super chats and super stickers. Now, as I've really thought about it, previously I've accepted tips through the Buy Me a Coffee platform. Now, well, that will still be there. That'll still be an option. What I like is being able to use a feature within the platform itself since I'm here on YouTube. So if you ever want to show your support, if you're like, hey, you get so much value out of something, drop a super chat, drop a sticker, super chicker, drop a super sticker down it's right down below the YouTube live stream chat. It gives you that option. So thank you. And I really appreciate it, as this business, the writing business, all the writing stuff is my livelihood and my main business and go-to source of income. So much appreciated. And I've asked myself, how am I going to incorporate this into the elements of the live streams? So I'm taking a model that other big YouTubers, that a lot of big YouTube channels will take. So if you are submitting your story for the Story and Critique Show, I will start to prioritize. There's going to be a balance. I will start to prioritize because we do receive high submission rates sometimes. If you drop a super chat, it will prioritize and move your story to the front of the queue. Because I want to prioritize money, I'm going to try that for now. I'll try that for a few critique shows and we'll see how that feels. I'm also going to continue to balance that with first-time submissions of new community members that we have never heard from before. So that way we can make sure everybody's work is heard. Now, once we get to a point in the community where once it starts to blow up even more, I'll probably have to adjust, but that's what we'll be doing for now. Thank you, my friends. And Mr. John Stephenson, what's up, John in the house? Welcome, my friend. And let's see. So how do you submit? Very easy. Follow the submission link down in the YouTube description down below if you want to submit your story for today's show or for the queue. Now, hopefully, I'm going to try to get through as many as possible. So we're going to do our best. Now, as I have this set up on my end, so you can see that I have the critique guidelines and the story. And by the way, Miss Laura Nettles, Laura, I'm going to have your story here first. We're going to be getting into a little, let's see, adult dark academia, which I'm like, that sounds like a cool genre just to begin with. I didn't even know what that genre was specifically. I'm like, dang, that's cool. I'm like already a fan. So, the way that we go about these critiques, if I highlight or I do any highlighting throughout, it is neither a good nor a bad thing. The highlighting is for my benefit, so I know what to critique on after the live reading. I will read a certain section of the story, and then I will be followed with a live critique. Now, my critiques are based on these elements of creative writing. I try to focus it on what is the one or two things that work well and what are the one or two things that are not working well. So you can walk away from this with specific tangential value that will help you improve this excerpt of the story. And of course, during the conversation, if there's something that stands out to you, if there's like a piece of writing and you're like, wow, that's phenomenal, shout it out in the chat. If there's something where it like doesn't make sense or you're maybe a little confused about it, also drop it. If we're submitting our stories here, then we are assuming that all feedback is good feedback, as long as it's delivered in a way that is kind and as clear as possible. We want to help your stories get to that next level so that way you can get them published. And that is why joining the conversation is so relevant. Because I promise you, if you say something about an author's piece, they will 100% be reading it, whether they're here in the live stream or watching on the replay. All right, beautiful. So with that and without further ado, I am ready to hop into Laura, A Study in Demonology, Adult Dark Academia by Laura Nettles. All right, Laura. So I got yours queued up here on to start with. I'm super stoked. I'm like, this sounds like a very fun genre to hop into. So like the style for dark academia is a bit more purple. Sounds great. That sounds really cool. All right, perfecto. So, all right, so I got yours on deck. All right. And I am all ready. A Study in Demonology, Laura Nettles. Chapter 1, December 30th, 1860. Snow fluttered like falling moonlit angels upon the towering steepled dome roof of the St. Benedict School of Spiritual Studies. The main building was a single cylindrical structure, rising to pierce the pregnant clouds. Flakes that succumbed to their damnation piled around my booted feet as I stood on the edge of the dirt road Abbey Lane, newly arrived at Whitby, England. The handle of my heavy suitcase creaked in my leathered grip. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down physically, yet lifted my soul with the hope of revenge. Revenge and salvation. Weight wrought iron gates loomed, foreboding, despite being open like the arms of the Virgin Mother. Taking a deep breath of frozen air tinted with hoarse from the carriage, I passed the gas lamp lit threshold to my new life as an official student of demonology and exorcism. The small yet prestigious school was made of three main buildings: the cylindrical hollowed hall of learning on Abbey Lane, the surrounding square of teachers' quarters and ensconcing the hall, and the student dormitory surrounding a snow-crushed green to the west. They had a view of the Abbey ruins to the south, whose famous facade was recognizable from lithographs. The North Sea brought frigid air from Norway. My coat snapped in the wind as I strode towards the stone entrance, my footprints lost amongst the hundreds of imprints from the student body earlier that day. The letter in my breast pocket, dated a month ago, assured me I was expected, despite the lateness of the hour. The towering doors were cold, even though through my gloves. With a push, they parted on well oiled hinges. The smell of ancient books, freshly sharpened pencils, and sacramental wine wafted to greet me. It felt new and old all at once, full of the past and my future. Already more a home than the parish had been for the last 10 years, with thrice damned Father Roderick and his enforcement of self flagellation. Each of my footsteps echoed through the ornamental ceilings of crossing arches carved from unyielding stone. A moment of trepidation overcame me when I realized I didn't know which way to turn or which floor I was being expected on. Tristan Davies. Tristan Davies? This way, commanded a deep voice to my right, where the shadows were thicker, a slash of piercing light glinting off a heavy cross hanging from his neck. It was a man taller than even I by about a head. His clothes were pristinely pressed despite the time of night, the black attire of a Roman Catholic priest. With a sharp turn on his heel, he led me through the curved halls. I am Father Oreste. I am Father Oreste, one of the Catholicism professors, retired exorcist for the Diocese of Rome. A thrill seized me at his pronouncement. This was the man who had conducted over 500 exorcisms, including the famed exorcism of Giuseppina Rossi last year, the man who expelled 5 demons of hell from the body of the young woman, resulting in her salvation and prolonged life after all 3 sacraments were conferred. I reined in my excitement and bowed my head. It's an honor, Father. He did not respond as he led me on and up 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor. His quiet spoke of one used to vows of silence and devoting their life to a higher power. The hair on the back of my neck prickled as we neared a room with a door decorated with iron filigree, exuding the cold of winter. Father arrested, gestured to the closed wooden doors before standing aside, allowing me to access to open them on my own. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, he intoned before continuing down the halls alone. Taking a breath, I placed my hand between iron swirls with pointed ends reminiscent of the arrows of the angels or demon tails and pushed the door open. A breeze carrying ice flakes rushed out, rustling my hair and causing goose flesh to form under my long sleeves and coat. Enter Tristan Davies, called a man from behind a desk, flanked by large bookcases reaching to the vaulted ceiling. He was illuminated by a pool of warm light from a flickering, fluted gas lamp upon the mahogany desk. The golden flickers caused shadows to dance along the spines of shelved works of knowledge in many languages I had never studied. His blue, recessed eyes looked up to me as if seeing straight through my soul. Sir Arthur Hughes III, school president. I stepped into the room and approached the desk. Good evening, sir. Your journey was uneventful, I trust? He asked, pushing his chair back slightly, then rising. Without waiting for a response, he turned away from me to gaze out the open window. Most of the strangeness of the world seems to center around England these days. Demons are circling, Mr. Davies, their fingers reaching into the minds of the youth and possess our babes. It's up to us to study their ways and topple them from high places. I trust you're up to the task. He looked back at me, fierceness reflected in his gaze. I cleared my throat, staring straight ahead. Yes, sir. I'm here to learn about the devils and how to bring them low, cast them back into the pits from whence they came. Pain and the scars along my back spasmed at the cold and remembrance of my oath. The ache radiating up my arm alerted me to how hard I'd clenched my fist. I'm coming for you, Beelzebub. Vengeance shall be mine. It's been 10 years of survival. The next 4 will arm me. Good luck, lad. Good lad. The slightly rotund Sir Hughes walked around the desk, clapping me on my still smarting shoulder, but I held back my flinch. I expect great things from you. Those who have had a touch with death excel the farthest in our line of study. The veil thins and celestial knowledge seeps through porous connections. I'll not disappoint, sir. Resolve strengthened my spine, making me tower over the man of shorter stature. You have my word. Admirable. I'm sure you'll excel with your coursework. Semester starts in 2 days on the 2nd of January. Sir Hughes glanced to the clock fixed upon the wall where the hands pointed at 12 and 57. Well, tomorrow now, technically. Happy New Year's Eve. He then reached in a pocket and pulled out a key. This is for your dorm room, room 113 in St. Francis Xavier Hall, the western wing farthest from this building. You have one fellow student to share chambers with, Clarence Wright. He lost his former roommate a month before the end of last term. Fresh linens are already provided. He walked me to the entrance of the office, closing the door before I could question the circumstances of the previous occupant. I stood there for a moment, the weight of the key ominous in my hand. This Mr. Wright may be grieving the loss of his former roommate and thus resent me like a creeping weed impinging upon a fresh grave. I better say a prayer for a good reception. Hail Mary, full of grace. All right, and I will end the reading there. That is a really good breaking point. That feels like a good beat. So first off, Laura, that was awesome. I was immediately pulled into the world. First off, thank you so much for submitting that. That was a really cool story. I All right, my friend. So that was a lot of fun. I think my favorite part about it was I feel like I was pulled into the world immediately. It had this the very like dark undertone of the world, which was cool. I think the academia setting was very, very clear. I think that was very obvious from our two professor characters that we were introduced so far. So we got the two professor characters, our protagonist, and then we got reference to it sounds like probably one of the forthcoming plots, or maybe it's probably going to be a breadcrumb to a much larger plot would be my guess. But overall, loving the world, and I also love your writing style. You have a way with using metaphors and using descriptions to really express feelings, sentiments, and desires and to paint a picture. So I really want to commend you on that because there were absolutely a few where I was like, wow, that's actually really cool, like really, really great work. And sometimes when we're trying to paint a picture, it can always be challenging to find like, okay, what's like the right description? What's the right image that I want to paint for them? And I think you did a really, really good job of that. So awesome, awesome work. So as I dig into it, let's hop into the manuscript itself. So I would say so far, my favorite, I would say the world building is definitively the strongest. World building, absolutely the strongest, 100%. For this piece, the plot is a little hard to touch upon because we didn't get too far into it. My gut tells me that the plot's pretty well tuned at this point in the story. So I think I don't have any issues with the plot or the narrative. The world building so far is awesome. I think there's probably some areas just for editing down dialogue a little bit, but nothing crazy. That's the editor in me talking. And I would say structurally it looks all right. I would say the opportunity, I think the opportunity is probably character development, but more from a protagonist. And I'll get into that. I'll explain. So let's get into the beginning of it and see where we got. Awesome. John, I saw that you said you'll send me an email. I'll be on the lookout for it, my friend. Thank you so much for that. Let's see, just checking in the chat. What's up, Sarah? Welcome, welcome, my friend. Glad to have you in here. Let's see. The good world building master track. The good world building room for improvement. The text felt a little bit info heavy. Also, I'd love to know more about the characters. Yes, yeah. So there's a little extra text. There's a little wordiness in it, but I don't think that it's anything that's crazy. I think right now it's in a place where it could be ready for an edit potentially. So let's see. So hopping into it from the very beginning. So Snow. Okay, so we made it very clear from the very beginning that we're at the school vibe, and since this is the dark academia genre, very very awesome. So I thought I really really liked that. I thought that was great. And when I got here, so flakes that succumb to their damnation piled around my booted feet as I stood on the edge of the dirt road Abbey Lane, newly arrived at Whitby, England. So this was actually a really good setup. I did actually really like this description. Flakes that succumb to their damnation. I'm like, interesting. Like I like the word choice because it has that very like eternal struggle. And I think it does paint a very clear picture. I think my only challenge with Abbey Lane is when I think of Abbey Lane, I think of the Beatles personally, but that could just be a me thing. Yeah, that was my only thing. I was like, okay, and I'm thinking of Abbey Lane and the Beatles when I think about this area. But I know that is a predominant street over there. So that was just a me thing. But overall, I really love that description. So the hand on my suitcase creaked heavy in my leathered grip. Tones of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down physically, lifted my soul with the hope of revenge. Awesome. Revenge and salvation. So with something like this, and I'll tell you, like, I'll show you guys here what I would do, how I would go about an edit if I was to go on this first one, especially because first paragraphs are so important. I want to be able to start incorporating more facets of editing into this. So snow fluttered like falling moonlit angels upon the towering steeple dome roof of the St. Benedict School of Spiritual Studies. Snow fluttered like falling moonlit angels. I like that. So this is setting the vibe for the snow. So now we got the snow in the school, flakes that succumb to their damnation. The only thing is, do we really need snow and then snow here? Because now we're getting 2 extra descriptions of snow, which I just don't know is necessary. It's interesting because I actually like this one more, but you could argue that from like an image wise, we get the angelic bit and then we get the demonic bit here. So I'm like, okay, I'll leave that up to a subjective one, but I would say probably don't need to describe the snow twice in the opening one, probably because there's bigger opportunities in the first paragraph. But then we get the description of the school. The main building was a single cylindrical structure rising to pierce the pregnant clouds. And I like that. Absolutely like that. So we're doing there. Then we get the damnation thing. I already said my bit on Abbey Lane. The handle of my heavy suitcase creaked in my leathered grip. The handle of my heavy suitcase creaked. Now, I think it's probably obvious that the character is carrying it. So I was like, I don't think that this bit is really necessary. Like leathered grip. I'm like, all right, well, technically you're saying, right, so maybe he has a leather glove. You're painting the picture for what he's wearing in my leather grip. I was like, okay, I could go back and forth on that one. I'm like, it's obvious that we know he's carrying it, but maybe you want them to know that he has leather gloves. Okay, I'll give it to you that one. So that one's subjective. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down physically, yet lifted my soul with the hope of revenge. Yes. So this is the best statement. This is the single best sentence in this entire paragraph. This is the single best sentence in this entire paragraph because this touches on an emotional, a character emotional thing. I would actually recommend that this should be the first sentence. I would restructure this in a way I don't think I would lead into it with the snow bit right here. I think I would just adjust it slightly, but as an opening sentence, this is so much more powerful and I'm immediately pulled in. Think about it like this. Snow fluttered like falling moon, like angels. Okay, so something angelic as compared to tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down physically, yet lifted my soul with the hope of revenge. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down physically. Like, I don't even think I need physically. Weighed me down, yet lifted my soul with hopes. I was like, we don't need we want to cut down, get rid of wordiness as much as possible. Tomes of inherited ancient knowledge weighed me down, yet lifted my soul with hopes of revenge. Then I would probably do the suitcase bit right here. But then I'm like, okay. And I just because I want to get close to my main character as much as possible. That would be awesome. And then I go to, so that's kind of how I would go about this. And then like revenge and salvation, you've already set that he wanted revenge here. So then we're just adding the salvation bit to really prioritize it. I was like, when this was following this sentence, it wasn't necessary. But now if I ended up changing it, I think it could work a little bit better here because now we're reiterating it as the beginning and the end of this opening paragraph. So I just want to show you guys how I would go about kind of like looking at a paragraph as an editor to give you guys a little bit of my sense of kind of like how I would go about editing. Now, as I go into the rest of this here, so wrought iron gates loom foreboding despite being like the arms being open like the arms of the Virgin Mary. Great. Taking a deep breath of frozen air tinted with horse from the carriage. This is great. This is a very great description right here. Taking a deep breath of frozen air tinted with horse from the carriage. We know people probably know what horses smell like. So this paints a really good picture. I passed the gaslit lamp lit threshold to my new life as an official student of demonology and exorcism. Perfect. Our main character is walking to the school. We know from the first 2 paragraphs, they are going here for revenge. It's a snow-filled spiritual studies school, and they are going for demonology and exorcism. First page, we're essentially learning these 3 things. Beautiful. Wonderful, wonderful. Love it. Let's see. Awesome. And then, yeah, I saw your point. Just to clarify, Jared, you're combining Abbey Road and Penny Lane. Yeah, I was a little bit. Like I said, I don't think it detracts from it. It was just something that came to mind for me because Beatles are so well known. But I would agree. I don't think it detracts. It was just something that came to mind for me personally. You see the word abbey and think of churches. And right, and you see once again, totally a subjective thing. Let's see. Inscriptions. You are right. The editor does generally get paid regardless of what they erase, but a good editor who's working with their writer is generally going to make recommended deletions, and then any writer who hires an editor knows that editing can be subjective at times. It's not subjective that a sentence needs to end with a period or some type of exclamation or some type of something to that extent. That's not subjective. So obviously there's things in syntax and style that are not, but a lot of times with like more stylistic things, they can be subjective. So that's generally left to the author or the writer to determine. The abbey that inspired Dracula's castle. You know what, Laura? I would then, if you were doing that, I would reference Dracula. I mean, granted, I don't know I don't know, we don't know too much about the world yet, but if you wanted a Dracula, like reference Dracula, because that's a great reference, and that was completely lost on me. But I do know Dracula. I was like, it was funny. We found this really cute Dracula book. This is like the funny. You guys have to see this. Side note: we found this really cute Dracula book. Tell me that this book isn't really cute and not a book at all. That cracked me up so much. Speaking of Dracula, I had to say that. All right, let's see. Let me catch. Yeah, agreed. And the reason we would start with her, with the main character looking at the building, is because we want the reader to connect with the character and an emotional investment immediately. The setup of the world is important. It absolutely is. But because the way that you're writing it, you do have that opportunity that you can start with the character. Yep. And that would be another way that you could absolutely go about it. 100%. Absolutely. Mary, glad to have you in the stream, my friend. Absolutely, you can definitely bend syntax rules as part of your style. Just look at Cormac McCarthy. He just doesn't use quotation marks at all, ever. You are absolutely right. And the truth is, Eli, I'm not. Well, I do obviously I do know Cormac McCarthy. I'm not too familiar on their particular style. I think when you break rules, you have to be aware that it comes down to the reading experience. If you're going to break rules and it might lead to confusing your readers, you're potentially going to lose readers. Cormac McCarthy is a well-known author. I don't know if they broke rules in their initial books or if it was after they became well-known. I just don't know. So wrote in a different time period as well. So I would say for the average, I would try to stay away from bending certain syntax style rules unless it's like necessary or critical, or unless it feels like it's absolutely essential for your character or the story you're trying to tell. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Absolutely. All right, so let's see, Laura, hopping back into it, where we're at. So we go into the school itself. My coat snapped in the wind. So yeah, so this is all good. My footprints lost amongst the hundreds of imprints. Good. The letter in my breast pocket dated a month ago showed me I was expected despite the lateness of the hour. The towering front doors were cold, even through my gloves, with the pushly part and well-oiled hinges. The smell of ancient books. And let's see. Ancient books. Awesome. And then I know you said that this was a first draft. Perfect. So I always like to clarify where people are at in the drafting process when they submit something. Because I'm like, okay, perfect. Because as a first draft, Laura, this is great. As a first draft, this is actually really good. I want you to know that. First draft, excellent. Because remember, the goal of a first draft is to try new things, do as many different styles as possible, and get the core story out. I think as a first draft, this is actually really well done. This actually feels a little closer to a second draft, is probably my guess, but that could be either due to your familiarity with the story itself or your personal skill as a writer. Could be one of those two things. But this definitely feels closer to a second draft. Because I'm like, even this first bit, like everything works. There's nothing that's a glaring problem. A lot of it is probably is just like line editing more than anything right now. Because the world building is there. It's not like it's missing the world building. It's absolutely there. There just needs to be cut down on wordiness, which is very common for all writers. So let's keep going. Pocket did a month ago. Sherman as expected. The towering front doors were cold, even through my gloves. The push they parted on well-oiled hinges. Yeah, so I mean, this is all good here. I'll do more than home. So this is essentially setting up. This is setting up here. Like some of this stuff, I would challenge if it's necessary, but that's fine. It's still setting up the overall vibe of it. And then they're going here. I liked this. I like this first character that they meet. This first character is like deep voice to my right, where the shadows were thicker. So, okay. We're essentially setting this up as kind of like a darker character. I don't know why I kept thinking Severus Snape for some reason. I'm like, all right. But yeah, so we get this kind of like more foreboding presence. I was like, yes, I'm good. We get the character's name, Tristan Davies. Perfect. I'm great with that. It's an easy way to introduce our protagonist, POV. Good. Father Oreste. Like, I hope I was saying Oreste. By the way, if you, and I'm not saying this for you, Laura, but if anybody ever has a lot of names in their story that can be difficult to pronounce or confusing, glossary and table include a glossary for name pronunciation. But just that was a random side note. For me, let's see. A thrill seized me at his pronouncement. This was the man who had conducted over 500 exorcisms, including the famed exorcism of Giuseppina Rossi last year. The man who expelled 5 demons of hell from the body of the young woman, resulting in her salvation and prolonged life after all 3 sacraments were conferred. I reined in my excitement and bowed my head. It's an honor, Father. So I love this. I actually love the way you went about this. I would just edit it down a little bit, but I think overall this is such a great sentiment. I'm like, we get a clear picture of who this type of guy really kind of is based on what he's known for. Now, maybe this isn't who he is. Maybe this isn't who his character actually is, but I think this is actually really, really cool. Really, really cool. So I really like this. And let's see, his quiet spoke of one used to vows of silence and devoting their life to a higher power. So essentially, he's kind of like this like cold, religious, but very experienced, probably exorcist father. Liking him so far, he creates a good opening dynamic. Taking a breath, I place my hand between. A breeze carrying ice flakes rushed out. Yep, good. Enter Tristan Davies. Called a man from behind a desk flanked by large bookcases reaching to the vaulted ceiling. The golden flickers cause okay, and I love this. Once again, this is your description at work again, which I love. The golden flickers cause shadows to dance along the spines of shelved works of knowledge in many languages I had never studied. I love that. I feel like that paints a very clear image. I absolutely love that. The Dracula. Like, I can't reference Dracula because this is before that book gets published. Understandable. Completely understandable. That would actually make sense. Okay. Giuseppina needs to be introduced here as well. She will be a POV later on. Yeah. So realistically, if that's a necessity, then maybe having Giuseppina, Giuseppina, if I'm saying it right, then maybe introducing her when you introduce the other professor, or maybe having him pass the student off to her or something like that. Or you could have Giuseppina coming out of the headmaster's office in passing. There's number of ways you could go about them. Let's see. His blue obsessed eyes looked up to me as if seeing straight through to my soul. Sir Arthur Hughes, school president. I was like, okay. The reason I highlighted this was because I wasn't sure if it really needed to be italicized. Like I get why, because you want to call out to his name and draw relevant and like highlight his name. I don't know if it's really important. Sir Arthur Hughes the third, school president. Yeah, I feel like there's a better. My gut tells me there's a better way to introduce to introduce it for some reason as compared to having it as interiority. Yeah, I feel like there's a better way than that, but that's a subjective. Let's see. Your journey was uneventful. Yep, yep. So this is a good setup. This feels like a good initial of like this feels like welcome to Hogwarts. Let's get you set up here. Okay, so most of strangeness, demons are circling, their fingers reaching into the minds of the youth and possess our babes. I'm like, oof, creepy. It's up to us to study their ways and topple them from high places. I trust you're up to the task. So I like that this guy is kind of like, okay, kind of welcoming him. Something I would recommend, Laura, because since we're so early in this, I would actually recommend doing a little bit more tension building and make this initial conversation a little creepier or more subjectively creepier, because I think it would just build more tension early on, especially because you started off the first paragraphs with demons and with an angel and damnation and painting a picture of those extremes. And I know you mentioned it. I know it gets there with he mentions why the previous occupant of the room is no longer there. Something happened to him, and I can tell that's the first breadcrumb. But I think this early conversation, I think it's just a really great opportunity for there to be more tension and creepiness, more for the reading experience than anything. So that would be what I recommend. Like, I feel like the professor, what's his name? Sir Arthur Hughes III, should almost like be like put like a little like creepiness into it, because I mean he's talking about demons and babes, and it is good that he trusts that. He's like, I trust you up to the task. But why would our professor be so trusting of Mr. Davies? Maybe our professor's a good guy though. Maybe Sir Arthur Hughes is legendary and he's like Dumbledore. So hard to say, that could be his character, but right now is the way he comes across is just kind of like speculative of like, okay, he could be either good or bad. You kind of keep him at this neutral point, which is fine. But I would say like keep him at keep him at the same tone, but have his words do more foreshadowing and more like dark, spooky stuff. So it potentially could put our protagonist on edge, or it builds up more for the reading experience. And I think that will work very well, especially for this style of story. Let's see. I cleared my throat, staying straight ahead. Yes, sir. I'm here to learn about the devils. Yep. And pain in the scars along my back spasmed at the cold and remembrance of my oath. I was like, I'm pretty sure this would be the cold. At the cold remembrance of my oath. The ache radiating up my arm alerted me to how hard I'd clenched my fist. I'm coming for you, Beelzebub. Pain in the scars, the ache radiating up my arm. So I was like, I feel like there's a better way to. So pain in the scars along my back spasmed at the cold remembrance of my oath. The ache radiating up my arm alerted me to how hard I'd clenched my fist. I'm coming for you, Beelzebub. Vengeance shall be mine. It's been 10 years of survival. The next 4 will arm me. So this is actually I can tell this is actually really important. I would actually only reveal half of this. It's been 10 years of survival. Because this feels a little bit too much like on the nose. This feels like narrators trying to tell a reader something important. We don't want to do that. We want it to be a little bit more subtextual. So how I would go about that, I would actually save this. It's been 10 years of survival. I would introduce this in the next scene somehow, maybe as interiority. So I would push this back just a little bit. And I would instead let the focus be on Beelzebub, because let us focus on the one thing, and then that creates more additional like hook. And if he's responding to the professor, to Hughes, and Hughes says something creepy, that would then make him think about Beelzebub. And like, okay, cool. There's a even better tie-in. Right now, you're using it as the pain and the scars, which that does work. I think it actually does. I think you could probably just tie it into the conversation even closer if you really wanted to. Pain and scars along my back spasmed. The ache radiating up my alarm alerted me to how hard I'd clenched my fist. Yeah, and I was like, I think this could work. This could probably be put into one sentence to make it more poignant. But I think this is what's important. This is the most important part of this paragraph. So, but yeah, other than that, that's Good, good lad. And the rest, this is just kind of conversation. This is kind of just setting up the school. Oh, from a developmental perspective, the only question that came to mind was how come a new student is being given his instructions by the headmaster? Or no, he is the headmaster, right, sir? Or he's just a professor? The school president. Like, how come the school president is meeting with this guy? Granted, we don't know what the state, how many students are in the school, but I'm like, wouldn't that responsibility usually go to somebody who's like, like an admin or something to that extent? Or is this maybe this is like the vibe of this? Like maybe the professor has to like analyze everything because right now it feels like that this moment is just for the professor to be like, okay, here's like he's like, okay, I'm going to be a little creepy. I'm going to give you your schedule and here's your room assignment. Have a great day. And I feel like that if you're going to have it start with the president, which I'm not opposed to, I think it is good to start with the president. I just think that there needs to be a stronger reason of why the president. And that reason needs to be clear, why the president and why not the secretary, so to speak. And maybe this is the type of school where the president has to see eye to eye with every single student. Maybe that's the type of school this is. Maybe, and right now we're not far enough along that we don't know how big the school is. Is this a school where it's like 50 and it's like a very small secretive society, or a very small secretive school, or is it a school of like thousands and it's like bigger and more widespread? We don't know that yet. We don't necessarily have to know it yet because it's still early on, but that's kind of what I'm thinking on that part. So let's see. And I think this is from a roommate. Oh, and by the way, that this foreshadow here with the former roommate being lost, great foreshadow. Really, really great. This is setting up, I can tell, for the next big plot point. So I really love that. I already wanted to keep reading because I want to know what happened to former roommate. So I think that was a good job on that part. And yep, that brings us to the end of the critique. And yeah, so Laura, thank you so much for submitting. That was very, very cool. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with the genre, but it's definitely something I would read. And it's all like, I love it. It was absolutely, absolutely cool. It like makes me think like it's kind of like dark urban fantasy seems to be. But then I was looking up what adult dark academia, what the genre is. And then I was saying, okay, it's all the different elements of a lot of these different genres I'm aware of. So really, really great work, especially for a rough draft. Absolutely great work. Looking forward to seeing how the story comes along. You're always more than welcome if you want to resubmit it for future shows for later critiques. Absolutely. So very, very cool. Let's see. Pew. Hey, what's up, Mr. Penguin? Thanks for stopping by the stream, my friend. Let's see. And what else? What else? Yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, that's the thing with the professor bit. You could totally do it. You could do it very easily. You could. I think you just need to make sure that it's intentionality and that it's not like like an oversight. Absolutely. And let's see. So you said that it's a school of a couple hundred students. That's more doable. Couple hundred students, professor wants to meet every student. Great. Couple thousand students, professor wants to meet every student. A little more challenging. So yeah, I think that would make a little more sense. John, you always crack me up. You and your satire. Let's see. And if awesome. Yeah, very, very cool, Laura. And I could tell the community liked your story as well. So awesome. With that out of the way, we're going to be moving right along to Guardians of Harmonia, Night at the Enchanted Library, a fantasy genre by Megan Ryan. So, Megan, we're going to be hopping into yours next. Excellent. So, we're going to be hopping into yours next. And perfect, perfect, perfect. Let me make sure I have it all queued up here. All right, beautiful. All right, perfect. So I have yours all queued up, Paige. We're going to be hopping right into yours. But before we get there, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. We're here every day with the Right Now community. Whether you want writing sprints, a writing community, author interviews, critique shows, or blurb fests, short story competitions, and much, much more. 280 consecutive live streams and counting, and many more to come. So tap that follow button, tap that subscribe button, and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, beautiful. Awesome. And before I hop into that next one, how are you guys doing? How's the Saturday coming along for you guys? I always get really into the stories and I always have so much fun reading them. I hope the Saturday is treating all of you guys well. Always have to make sure to stay hydrated. So important. Okay. So with that one up, let's see. Let's move right along. I think we got some very, very good comments. Is the author in the chat? That's a good question. Not quite certain, but whether or not the author is here or not, the author will always be able to see these on the replay. So as we say, it's not a requirement for for authors of story submissions to be here in the live stream, but the live stream just gives them that extra thing where then they can ask the questions while it's being read live. But I know the feedback and the value is still incredible, even from a replay experience. Mary, I got a lot accomplished, like those things that after 3 years took 15 minutes to do. Good for you, Mary. I think that literally just goes to show how far along you're coming. That is so incredible. So incredible. I'm like really looking forward to seeing how our little trio of heroes continue to evolve in crystals. Sure, Eli, that's a really great question. So let me pull up their piece. So now that we have the submissions, or let me see. So since I have the submission form, let me pull it up and let me see if there's anything in particular they were looking for. So, okay. So this is a fantasy story. It looks like this is it's a short story. It's a final draft. Awesome. So my guess is probably just feedback overall, but I think I probably need to include that extra option in the form in the future to be able to make sure that people can let me know what type of feedback they're looking for. So I think that's actually a good call out, Eli. Doreen, you're like, I rewrote the first chapter of my book for the gazillionth time. And for the first time, I love it. So great Saturday here. Aw, absolutely, Doreen. I'm glad you finally got the right first chapter. And like, I'm not surprised that you had to rewrite the first chapter because of all the chapters that matter. The first one has to pull them into the story. Like 100% has to pull them into the story. Awesome. Megan, it's one shot standalone of the short story. Perfect. Wanted to make sure. So, Megan, and then I know under your pen name, Paige Penrose. So we have that here, which is awesome. And then it's awesome. It's one short standalone story. So yeah, Megan, definitely feel free if there's any specific type of feedback that you're looking for. Otherwise, I'll just go general. Like TR, chill Saturday this week. No work. Might watch some movies later tonight. Nothing huge on the writing agenda this weekend since I submitted my flash fiction story. Yes, I know, TR. I'm so stoked. So stoked. So happy you submitted it, my friend. I'm like, that is bomb.com. Hey, what's up, Courtney? Welcome, my friend. Let's see. Eli, that's actually really cool. That's really cool. When we have such limited time, I realize I can try to focus on specific stuff if the submitter wants to increase the value of my feedback for them. Yeah, so Eli, I think what I might do for future submissions, I think I'm going to add that as a question on the submission form. If there's something that they're looking for in terms of like specific feedback. So I actually really like them. All right, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we're having a good Saturday. All right, so I'm super excited. You guys know I love my fantasy. So let's hop into it. Let's see what we got here. Guardians of Harmonia, Night at the Enchanted Library. It was an illuminating afternoon at Guardian Academy, an elite school that educated Harmonia's best and greatest students to become tomorrow's protectors, to ensure the safety and well being of their realm. At this moment, three Guardian apprentices, Kyra Starlight, Minty Peppermint, and Giovanni Linguini, were traversing the courtyard as a shortcut to the library. As part of their studies, that they're required to join an after-school club to choose from a wide variety of activities. Monster hunting, history and lore, botany lovers club, the list kept going. Suggested by headmistress Mikami that the Library Society Club was the best choice for Kyra and her friends to join. It was a great facility to build teamwork, learn organizational skills, and discover the wonder of reading. Kyra found this suggestion to be highly effective. She loved books with all of her heart. Being in a library full of books reminded her of the library her mother managed back home in Honey Meadows. Her friends, Giovanni and Minty, though, they'd see them as material to make forts or have a stacking contest. They'll change their minds if she showed them how amazing books can be whilst working in the library. They soon arrived at Magica Library, that's stationed on the west side on Academy grounds. The library was ginormous in size, that one would mistake it for a manor if it were not for the unusual orb-shaped architectures that branched out on the sides of the building and suspended in midair. Kyra, parting a few strands of her silver hair that glistened in the sunlight, out of her face to gaze with eyes that were blue, as the sky itself at the mystifying library's exterior. Minty and Giovanni didn't have the same enthusiasm and sparkle in their eyes like their friend, although Minty saw the orb domes as giant bubblegum balls. The three approached the giant oak double door. Kyra pushed all the way for her friends to step inside. When she raised her head to take in the interior, her face lit up like a sparkler, hands placed on her face in excitement at what she was seeing before her eyes. It was as whimsical as its exterior. Levels upon levels that filled to the brim with books, rolling library ladders to glide across the shelves to find what book you sought. In Magica's case, sometimes the books would come straight to you if you're willing to catch the right one during their flight through the library for any student to catch and study upon. Nestled right in the center of the building was a grand kapok tree that stood in the center. Tiny orbs of colorful lights floated throughout it. Underneath the base of the tree, there was the librarian's desk, where Jim, librarian apprentice slash library page, was sitting at his station in the meantime, going through the clipped papers on his clipboard at the agenda that awaited him. He's assigned to showing the newest members the ropes as to how the library operated. He rose his head upon taking in the fresh faces in the library, standing up from his desk and coming out from behind to welcome them. He assumed that they were the candidates that were to become part of the library society under headmistress Solaria's request. He began to give them a tour of the library, giving a brief history of the facility before explaining and demonstrating different tasks they were to do whilst partaking in the club. Along with maintenance, there was discussion of book genres, authors, what inspired one to get involved into reading. This made Giovanni and Minty groaned at the talk of books and chores, but Takira was happier than a kid in a candy store. Under Jim's supervision, the gang began their duties by dusting the shelves to ensure the books are in peak condition. Next came checking in items from the sorting room and placing designated items in their respective bins. Giovanni caught a glimpse of a book that told about swords and weaponry on one of the stacks. Upon opening its spine, when all of a sudden a sword was pointed directly at him, a few inches from his neon pink eyes. He closed the book and threw it right back into the pile with the books being ready to sort in. By early evening, they held giant butterfly nets in order to scoop up the flying books and put them to bed. Winged books need their beauty sleep too, but some of them refused to go back on their respected shelves. Though it was a huge library and catching them all wasn't going to be easy, Jim picked a book off the shelf on Aero Magic Dynamics. Opening it up as he placed his palm onto a page to summon forth a flying carpet for each of them. He assumed they took their class about using aerodynamical mystical vehicles like brooms, magic carpets, etc. They each hopped into a carpet and flew off after the winged books. Minty was having a blast, racing around the library and scooping up a few in the process. She egged Giovanni on to make their chore a game, entitled Book Hunt, that rose his motivation to turn a boring task into a fun book-snatching contest. The two swirled around the archways, flew down a couple of the aisles, making sure not to bump into any to cause them to fall over, and flew up a spiral staircase toward one of the observation orbs. A book of fairy tales was ajar when it sprinkled stardust that floated down like snow on a peaceful winter morning. Minty caught one on her tongue and commented that it tasted like sparkling pop rocks. Mmm. Once they gathered the winged books and shelved back to their respected categories, Kyra and her friends, along with Jim, took a break from tasks to catch a breather. They were enjoying themselves until their free time was interrupted by the sound of glass shattering, and the tiny orbs flashed like police lights and made a ringing noise. Someone has broken into the library. Immediately, they sprung forth toward the west end to come face to face with the intruder. Standing before them was a snarky-looking man dressed in a midnight robe that made him blend into the shadows without detection. Yet, he was careless to let himself be known now when he shattered one of the windows using a brick. Well, 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 seems to me that I've gained myself an audience, the thief said as he was surprised that there was people working the late shift. It would appear he miscalculated when he formulated his plan to seek out the Guardian's grimoire. That was said to be locked away in the Academy's library, but now a monkey wrench was tossed into his plan. And we didn't expect to have some noisy thief disrupt our break time. It's the only time we can enjoy some goody treats, and we were in the middle of chowing down on the swirlberry muffins I brought along, the peppermint-haired Minty said as she shook her fist to him, aggravated that this thief had the nerve to disrupt break time. Listen, pal, I don't know who you think you are, but you picked the wrong place to rob from. I mean, seriously, what kind of thief would want to break into a library? Giovanni said as he was confounded upon the thief's objective to what business he had at a magical library. I've come seeking the Guardian's grimoire, so I may use its power to become the greatest sorcerer in the world. He boasted as he rose his hands high up in the air, letting out a fiendish laugh. Seriously? You want a dusty grimoire that'll grant you the powers of a god? Total cliche, bro. Giovanni stared blankly at the loon. It isn't a dusty grimoire. He stomped his right foot down on the ground like he was trying to kill a bug. It is a book of infinite wisdom and magic. The Guardian's grimoire is one of Harmonia's most ancient and precious artifacts, kept hidden deep away from public eye and sealed away with. We won't allow you to take the Guardian's grimoire. Kyra stepped forward, positioning herself into a fighting stance. The Guardian's grimoire will never fall into the hands of a charlatan like you, Jim proclaimed as he glared angrily at the thief. Well, just have to see about that now, will we? The thief rose his hand as a dark ball of energy began to form and unleashed a powerful dark lightning bolt at them. Kyra created a light shield to deflect the dark lightning bolt from striking at them, but it was a diversion to allow the thief a head start toward the back of the library. The Forbidden Archives is said to be located somewhere around the west end of the building. Earlier, Jim told them that the archives was off limits to students and accessed by the library staff. If the thief found a way to access the room, he'd not only steal the grimoire, but other valuable books he could sell in the black market or worse, burn them. We can't let him get out to the archives and get that book, Jim shouted to his associates. And how are we supposed to find him, Poindexter? He sprinted, and Serpentine, after that little lightning bolt blast he fired at us, he could be halfway there by now with his ninja-like reflexes, Giovanni protested, raising his hands up in the air in frustration. Well, they tried to figure out a course of action as quick as they could. Kyra stared around the shelves around them, and from the corner of her eye, she spotted a book on monsters, mystics, and marvels. Wanting to confirm her precision, she took a few steps closer to the book and saw it was a 398 number. They were in the 398's aisle that cataloged Harmonia's myths, legend, and fairy tales. Her face lit up like the bulb in her head. She quickly swiped the book from the shelf before rushing back to her friends. We can use this to get the thief. She waved the book up in the air for her friends to see, like she was waving a bulky flag. I don't think reading at a time like this will solve our dilemma, Kai, Giovanni scoffed when his hope dimmed and rolled his eyes slowly. No, Kyra is right. Books are exactly what we need to help us handle this thief, Jim said as he figured out right away what Kyra was up to with that book. As you three should have known already, the books in this library can be beneficial to your brain, but to your training as guardians. They at times would borrow some of our books to use in their travels, but it requires mana to draw out the magical energy to manifest the creatures and materials within their pages. Awesome. And I think I'm going to end the reading there because I want to make sure I have time to go through the critiques on it. Awesome. All right, perfect. So first off, very, very cool opening for a fantasy story. I always love the vibe of these types of fantasy stories. Thank you for submitting that first off, man. And that was really very, very, very cool, my friend. Awesome. So I think what I really liked about that is we have three very diverse characters. We have three very diverse character types. And I felt like each one kind of had a distinct personality, which I thought was actually kind of cool. I think there's an opportunity for us to maybe see it brought out a little bit more so. But I think they have very cool personalities. I absolutely love Giovanni. So far, Giovanni is my favorite character. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Sokka from Avatar. Kind of gave me like Sokka vibes a little bit, or Sokka. Yeah, Sokka. So I would say Giovanni was definitely my favorite character so far. I would say the characters were cool. I feel my gut tells me that the plot is actually pretty sound. I think that the strength of this, just from reading from this first half section of it, is probably the plot feels pretty good. So I feel pretty good so far about the plot. I liking the character development. The world building, I was like, I really like the magic element of that, like books and like the magic power comes out of books. I think that's actually really, really cool. I was a fan of that. I was asking myself if there was other ways to show it earlier on, but you kind of did that with Jim showing us around the library. I think there's two big opportunities in this, and most of it is really relying on the structure and the grammar of it. There's a couple of grammar syntax opportunities, and I'll dive into that. So let's get into it, and let's just see what the chat is doing. This reminds me of an animated show I would watch after school. Yeah, I could totally see this as like an anime. I could totally see this as like an animated, like children's, like not children, but like anime, like urban fantasy show. This totally would have that vibe. Absolutely. I could see this being turned into a script. for an animated show. Yeah, like I said, this has been from a few years back. It's always kind of nice when you have something in your catalog and you pull it out and you haven't looked at it in a while, because then you always get a fresh perspective on it, especially if you've given yourself time. Absolutely, Megan. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm actually going to help you right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over your piece. I'm going to help you be a better writer right now. And I want you to see some of these things. There's some things that you do consistently that you can actually fix very easily. And I'm going to point it out to you. So we're going to dive into it. So let's start with the beginning. So starting straight up from the top. So by the way, great name. Very great title, by the way. I love the title. I think it's a good Night at the Enchanted Library. Definitely makes me think it's going to. You said it was fantasy. It makes me think it could be like young adult potentially. It kind of had the vibe of like this is like a series of books where like every book is like an episode of like Guardians of Harmonia, Night at the Enchanted Library, Guardians of Harmonia, Dragons in the Sky, Guardians of Harmonia, books. And like I totally could see that, and I understand why I would see it as an animated show. It just had that like vibe, almost that not serialized, but that like every book's like a different adventure, so to speak. So as we get into this, so starting at the beginning, it was an illuminating afternoon at Guardian Academy, an elite school that educated Ronia's best. So at this moment, three Guardian apprentices, Kyra Scarlight, Minty Peppermint, and Giovanni Linguini. So Kyra Starlight. So on the naming structure, and this is just something that comes to mind. And I actually, now that I've like read the characters, I feel like this was intentional. I love Kyra Starlight. I think this is a great name for her. I like your protagonist name, Minty Peppermint. And I'm like, okay, so then anytime I think about Minty, I'm gonna think about, obviously you want us to be thinking her personality kind of like a peppermint, kind of a little sweet, hard candy. So peppermint, sweet, maybe packs a punch. Minty Peppermint, minty peppermint. I was like minty. I don't actually think I'm bad, and this is why it makes me think like once again young adult animated, because this is totally the style of that type. Giovanni Linguini. The only thing with that was Giovanni, great. Linguini kind of gave me like a comedic vibe, but I think that was what you were going for with him, because I think he is. I think he's the comedic relief. Is my guess. Yeah, adventure that would tie into stuff. Yep. Yeah, the naming part, I had to come up with different names for characters. Giovanni was kind of inspired by Giovanni Potager of Epithet Erased. I'm not too familiar with that one, but I do love the character. I absolutely do. I think the only thing with the name is I think the name makes his name just sound too comedic. And once again, this is a subjective thing. Like chat, let me know how you feel. Do you like the name Giovanni Linguini specifically? I'm fine with Giovanni. Giovanni's a great name, but Linguini kind of makes the name at heart come across too like comedic. And even though he's probably a comedic character, I don't think the name inherently should be a comedic thing unless the story is a comedy. And this story is not a comedy. So that's just my recommendation. I might think about maybe the last name per se, but once again, that's just a subjective thing on my part. Let's see. As part of their studies, they're required to join an after-school club to choose from a wide variety of activities. I like this. So I like that you're setting up. And something I actually want to point out to you, Megan. So this is the first structural thing that I think I can help you out with. I first off want to bring this back to normal font size that we would see in like a book. And let's drop this. So it's not there. Where did my... There we go. Okay. So I want to drop this real fast back to how we would normally see this. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, I think 1.5 is generally a little bit more accurate. So one of your biggest things that you see is your paragraphs. White space is so important in storytelling. Now, this is a little closer. I blew everything up on the screen because I want you guys to see it. But right now I'm shortening. I'm making this more normal, like a normal reading experience, because I want you to see the point I'm proving. We can have long paragraphs. There's nothing wrong about having a long paragraph if everything in it is essential. But when we have too long a block of texts, you chance a reader tuning out because psychologically, and I'm sure somebody here in the chat can probably say why, but psychologically, when we see this long block the text, we space out. That's why we need to have a good level of white space in our stories. And that's why using alternating paragraph sizes is so important, between 1-sentence paragraphs all the way up to 10, 15-sentence paragraphs. That's like a natural flow state. And obviously every writer is different. So my first recommendation for you, Megan, would be to cut down on the length and size of your paragraphs. And let's see. So let's do this first one. I'll give you an example here. Let's go. This one is very long. So we'll do the opening one first. So let's see how would I go about cutting up this paragraph? I want to make sure you can see. All right. So it was an illuminating afternoon at Garden Academy, an elite school. We'll push that back up, give us more space. Let's give us a little bit more. So it was an illuminating afternoon at Garden Academy, an elite school that educated Harmonia's best. At this moment, 3 Garden apprentices, as part of their studies, they were required to join an after-school club to choose from a wide variety of activities. Yep. Okay. So we're doing a couple of different things here. So you're setting up the school, you're setting up the characters, and then you're setting up the activities. So you could either move the next paragraph there. That could go either way. I think I would, as part of the study required, but the list kept going. Yeah, actually, I think I would do that. I think I would separate like this. I think I would go here. So I would go this. I would probably add an extra sentence here of giving me maybe a little bit of description. Like, who are these? And because I know you did this here, her friends, Giovanni and Minty, though they'd seen them as material to make forts or have a stacking contest. Okay, so that's right. You do describe them here. So that's actually fine. This moment, the 3 guardians. Yep. And you're going here. So at this moment, 3 guardian apprentices, Kira start. Like Minty, you're setting up the school, you're setting this up. So what I would actually do is I would add a sentence here of like, Guardian Academy, an elite school that educated the best and tomorrow's protectors and ensure the safety and well-being of their realm. I would probably do some type of foreshadowing or just some type of thing for this school. Only the best, only the cream of the crop. The cream of the crop were passed through these hollowed halls, right? So I would just do something that ties it up better. And then this bit, right? So we go into here and we're actually getting into Kyra's POV now. It's a great facility to build teamwork. And then this would be a separate paragraph. So this part is really about setting up Kyra. As part of their studies, they're required to join an after-school club suggested by headmaster Mikami that the Library Society Club was the best choice for Kyra and her friends to join. It was a great facility to build teamwork, learn organizational skills, and discover the wonder. Kyra found the suggestion to be highly effective. Okay, so I would set this up here as a Kyra POV. Kyra looked over, Kyra wrapped her arms around her friends, Kyra wrapped her arms around her friends enthusiastically. And I can learn how to spell enthusiastically. Enthusiastically. Okay. And then I would set this up as Kyra POV. And then we go into this. Kyra found the suggestion. Being in a library full of books. Good. Could be edited down a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then her friends, Giovanni and Minty. And then I would just do a little description about the friends. I'd move that here. So you see how I broke up this first paragraph into 3 separate paragraphs. And it could, like I said, this middle one could be cut down a little bit, but it's made the reading experience just a little bit easier on the eyes. So that would be a recommendation on my part. Obviously, if you're by yourself, what I would say, Megan, is just focus on just doing the paragraphs a little shorter. That would be my first. That's like the easiest way to look at it. Just make your paragraphs a little bit shorter, and then you don't chance losing the reader. So that would be my recommendation. alternate paragraph sizes. And we're at the beginning of the story, so it's possible that that does happen because I know you go more dialogue in the later bit, but that's my first recommendation. So awesome. So back into, let's blow the text up again. And let's double space this. So I wanted to show that to prove a point. All right, so going back into this, her friends Giovanni and Minty, though they'd seen them. This was fun. Great character development here. Great character development. Her friends Giovanni and Minty, though, they'd see them as material to make forts or have a stacking contest. I love that. This shows tons about who our friends are. They couldn't care less about books. They want to smack each other with books and have book pillow fights. Like that's fun. Great job on that part. So then we get to the magical library. Minty and Giovanni didn't have the same enthusiasm and sparkle in their eyes like their friend, although Minty saw the orb domes as giant bubble gum balls. So you have a lot of good stuff going on here. They soon arrived. The library is ginormous. If it were not, parting a few strands of her silver hair that glisten in the sunlight. Yeah, so I would say once again, just keep in mind like my paragraph suggestion. I'm not going to touch upon it again, but yeah, that's what I would still recommend. And then moving on to the next point, nestled right in the center of the building was a grand kapok tree that stood in the center. Tiny orbs of colorful light floated through it. I don't actually know what a kapok tree is, but that could just be me. That could just be a me thing. But I kind of like this idea that there's like this tree in the middle of this library, which that's actually kind of cool. So like I thought that was kind of a cool vibe. I just didn't know what a kapok tree is. And I think it might be a rare tree. So I was like, maybe give a little bit of description on what a kapok tree is, or maybe just like what type of leaves we're seeing or some type of color or smell or something. Like when you walk in the library, what's it going to smell like? Like, will it smell like dusty old books, or do we have like nature? That could be something that could help. I might recommend with your showing to do a little bit more touching on some of the senses. You don't have to go overboard, but maybe using one or two more senses here or there in terms of how Kyra perceives the world. Okay, so this is the second structural opportunity, Megan. You do a case of head hopping. So head hopping is actually a very, very common problem. So right now, our point of view character, and you can have more than one point of view character in a story. That's fine. We see that in large cast of character stories all the time. But right now, at least in this story, who is this story being told through? The story is being told through Kyra. Kyra is our POV. Now, obviously, you started off with as the narrator, and that's fine. But by the time we get to the library, we're seeing the story through Kyra's eyes. Yes, it is possible to switch between different characters' POVs, but we have to be very clear when we're switching a mindset from one character to the next. That's why it's generally not recommended to switch multiple point of views in one paragraph, because it leads to confusing the reader. Is it possible to switch back and forth between different paragraphs? Sure, but then you have to set it up and make sure the reader is clear, because at the end of the day, it just comes down to you don't want the reader to get lost. That is the biggest thing. You do not want the reader to get lost. So when we're looking at this, Minty and Giovanni didn't have the same enthusiasm and sparkle in their eyes like their friend, although Minty saw the orb. Nope, we're down here. Where was I? He assumed that there were the candidates that, okay. So this is the case of head hopping here. So underneath the base of the tree, there was the librarian's desk. Jim, he is assigned to showing the newest members. He rose his head upon taking in the fresh place in the library, standing up from his desk and coming out from behind to welcome them. And then, let's see, along with me, there was discussion of book genres. This made Giovanni and Minty groaned at the talk of books and chores, but Kyra was happier than a kid in a candy store. So you're starting off on Jim's, nestled around the corner. So right here, we're in Kyra's point of view, and this paragraph is Kyra's point of view, and then this paragraph is Jim's point of view. Underneath the base of the tree, there was a library desk. Yep, so we're in Jim's head right now in this paragraph. He assumed, And we know we're in his head because we're saying he assumed that they were the candidates that were to become, yep, part of the society. So then we're like, okay, so we're in what Jim is thinking. Now, at the end of this made Giovanni and Minty groan at the talk of books and chores. Yep, all right, that works. Because that's a physical reaction that Jim can see. Perfect. But Kyra was happier than a kid in a candy store. So, how do we know that Kyra was happier than a kid in a candy store? But Kyra was happier than a kid in a candy store. How do we know that? Unless Kyra, you say that she's jumping for joy, this leads me to believe that this is what Kyra is thinking. We know that when he talks to them, Kyra is thinking that she's happier than a kid in a candy store, unless you give an action. But in the same paragraph, you also have Jim, who is making an assumption, which is something that's happening, an interiority, something happening in Jim's brain, and then something that is happening in Kyra's brain. These 2 points contradict each other in one paragraph because they're 2 separate character points of views. It is possible to do it in a single paragraph, but you just chance losing the reader. This is what is called head hopping, when you switch between multiple character point of views to the point where it can create a potentially confusing reading experience. So let's say we go back here under Jim's supervision. And it looks like you wanted to have Jim be the point of view, which is fine. Like, that's totally fine. You wanted to have Jim be our lead point of view. I would say if we are switching to Jim's point of view, I would set him up from the beginning. So you do describe his character, but instead of describing it like this, I'd be like, Jim, Jim scribbled. I would start off like, let's get into his head. Jim scribbled notes. Jim scribbled notes precariously in the tome of in danger. I don't know. Give us some type of name. Jim scribbled notes precariously in the tome of danger as he heard the pitter patter of students, prospective students, as he heard the pitter patter of footsteps. Let's go that. We could probably do it a little better, but just to give an example. So if Jim's the POV, I would set it up, do some type of action so we know interiority. Jim scribbled notes precariously in the tone of danger as he heard the pitter patter of footsteps. This tells me Jim is definitely the POV. Cool. Now I have a very clear switch. Cool. This was before narrator. Maybe it was Kyra. Awesome. Now I'm in Jim's head. I'm clear. It just makes it a little clearer. Let's say Jim scribbled notes, precarious in the time of danger. He's assigned to showing the newest members of the ropes as to how the library operated. He rose his head upon taking in the fresh faces. He assumed, yeah. So that would be that one. So that's just one case of head hopping. I'm pretty sure there's a couple others. We'll see. Yeah, see. And let me just hop back into the chat. Let's see. And I think we have some really good comments here. And you know what's interesting? Because Courtney, you said it's like reading a lecture rather than getting pulled into the story. I started getting pulled into the story with the action. So I started getting pulled in the story once the thief showed up. And I think it's because then it started moving along faster. So I would say, yep, it would just be definitely cutting down on like description early on. That's really what it is. You actually do have the stuff there. You just want to cut back on the description. You want to get in. I want to get in my characters' heads and feel an emotional connection with my characters. And that's why I was saying on the naming bit. Awesome. Yeah, so that actually totally makes sense. This is elementary middle grade. I think that I'm totally getting the vibe from it. Let's see. The name works for an elementary story. Yep. Yeah, and that's why I was like middle grade. You could technically adjust it. And Eli, so you said, I'm not even saying I agree with you that it is head hopping, but if it was, why is that inherently bad? So this is actually a really, really great question. So how do I explain it? So a very common problem with writers, a lot of writers do this, is this thing called head hopping. Head hopping is when we switch back and forth between two character perspectives. When we are reading a story, we want to connect with a character and understand what is going on. If in one sentence you're saying Johnny felt that the world was his oyster. In the next sentence, you're like, Susie went to go punch Johnny, but she was afraid that Johnny didn't love her. In the next sentence, Johnny wanted to hug her, but he was afraid of rejection. There are ways to go about it where you can make it clear, but the problem is every single time that you set up a new character point of view, you have to be very, very clear about it. You have to be very clear that you're switching a character's point of view perspective. And a lot of the times what happens is we're usually in one character's point of view. And this is what always happens. We have a paragraph where we're in one character's point of view, but then there's a single sentence or maybe a couple sentences where it says like, oh, this other character felt this thing, or this other character was afraid of this thing. What happens is if the core subject of the main character is where the reader is cemented, and then we're like, well, how do we know if what our main character is thinking if we're now being told that this other character feels a way? It can create a jarring reading experience. And I'm not saying that it can't be done, but I think that the challenge is you have to do it in a way where you're setting up when you are switching characters' point of views. You can't just say a character felt this way. You have to go about it in a way. And once again, it just goes down to the reading experience. I'm sure there are writers out there who have probably found a way to alternate character point of views, sentence, 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 and still make it clear. So yeah, I would say that's why. And that's why I would say that head hopping, I would say it's less a bad thing. I would just say it's a very, very commonly misused. It's very commonly misused. And it's difficult to pull off for a lot of writers, which is why I generally recommend is just like an easy rule of thumb. Keep one paragraph to the main one character point of view. Either switch paragraphs if you're going to set up or switch sections until you're familiar with it and you understand like, hey, if I have introduce another character point of view, I'm not just going to confuse my reader. Because once again, it just comes down to, I don't want to lose the reader experience. If your reader is ever confused, they stop reading. And that's really what it amounts to, Eli. And once again, reading's an entirely subjective experience, but it's like, yeah, like we're not dumb. We know it's a narrator telling us a story. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I don't read the head hopping part and think anything is wrong with it. Like we're not dumb. We know it's a narrator telling us the story. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I don't read the head hopping part and think anything is wrong with it. Okay. Let's see. Like people tell stories like that all the time in real life if it's in past tense. I don't see why we have to be like experiencing it with the character. It's popular now, but like I don't think it's law. Yeah, once again, Eli, I don't think it's law either. I think it just comes down to being able to create a reading experience that doesn't lose your readers. And I think that's the point that I make. Once again, with a lot of rules of writing, it's a lot of you can always break the rules. Like you've said previously, like you can definitely always there's ways to go about breaking rules. There's ways to do dialogue without the dialogue tags. There's ways to do different things. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to Who am I writing this for? And what type of reading experience do I want to create? And if there's something that you're going to do that could potentially confuse readers, readers are intelligent. I absolutely agree with you. But because there's so many options of stories to read out there, it's you don't want to do things that could potentially lose them. However, I'm sure there's examples of writers who do head hopping very, very well. And I feel like I should actually probably make a video on this now that I think about it. It's like, I feel like I should probably do a video on this. I think I could probably explain this better in a video. Yeah, I've touched on head hopping a couple times. I definitely see it every once in a while, but it does seem to be a common problem that I see with writers. Yeah. So Eli, I hope that explained it. I hope I was able to explain it clearly enough. I feel like I could probably explain it better. Absolutely. But let's see. So before I hop out of your story, Megan, upon opening its spine, all of a sudden his sword is pointing directly at him. I wanted to say that I actually really like the magic. I really liked your use of magic in the world. I thought the magic with the book was actually really cool. I just want to see a little bit more of this magic. And I could tell you're probably doing that with the thief. Yep, and I actually like the cool magical stuff going on, right? So you basically open books and the books can do magical stuff, which that's actually kind of a cool thing. So I actually do really like this. I do really, really like what you're doing with your magic system. I think I just want a little bit more maybe a bit more like feelings on what are like other elements of like how to upon opening its spine, a sword was pointing directly at him a few inches from his neon pink eyes. That's kind of scary. How does our main character feel about this? Or do the characters jump, or what do they how do they react? So I think that's something that comes to mind. Okay. So as I'm looking at this, so with the thief bit, and we didn't expect it. I actually thought that of this your story submission, I would say that my favorite was actually the thief portion. I would say that was definitely my favorite part of this experience. I loved the thief portion. I had a lot of fun with Giovanni. I was like Giovanni's bits, like obviously like the writing could be edited a little bit, but like Giovanni was funny. Yeah, and I think the reason that the dialogue started working, why it started flowing once we got to the action, is because you focused a little less on doing these large descriptions, and you started letting the dialogue with some bits of action come together. So I really want to commend you on this initial setup with the thief and the students. This is when I started feeling like okay, I started feeling like I was getting into like a flow state with the with this exchange. So I think that was actually my favorite part of it. Awesome. And I think that's all that I got for you. So I think that's absolutely all that I got for you, Megan. So I hope that helped. I know we went into a couple of different areas, and definitely let me know if you have any questions or any follow up, because I thought that was a really cool story. And I'm actually very interested and intrigued to better understand and explore the magic of the books. Who doesn't love books more than me as a writer? So I think that's actually really cool. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. All right. Perfect. So with that one is good. Let's see. And then let me hop back into chat here. So I can tell it looks like we're chatting about the omniscient nerd. I'm sorry, I'm going to push. Let's see. Mary, you made a good point. Like, if I'm reading a head hopping story, I can get dizzy. It's like standing in a crowded room and trying to keep up on all the conversations at once. I think that's another reason, like, it can potentially get confusing. And like Eli, if I think about stories, like let's think about stories that have a lot of characters. One of my favorite epic fantasy stories, Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time has like a trillion characters and is known for having the highest cast of characters in a fantasy story. But the even when there's scenes with all these characters, it's done in a way where you don't have characters switching point of view. Generally mid paragraph, every once in a while you do, but they generally switch off. Like that would be a way where you can do something with a lot of characters, but usually a section follows a single point of view. And I think another reason the POV is so important is because we want the reader to connect with the character. You want the reader to connect with the moment. How are we going to know? How are we going to know if a how are we going to allow a reader to connect with our character if they're not sure which character to connect with? If you keep switching frequently, then it makes it difficult for the reader to create an emotional connection, because then they can't feel tethered to a single character in a specific scene or specific moment in time. And I mean, that's really part of it, right? We do a lot of times, like we do, our readers are really intelligent, but another a part of our goal as writers is we have to make the reading experience as easy as possible. Make the reading experience easy, because at the end of the day, readers just want to get lost. Reading, sometimes it's a distraction, sometimes it's informative. We just want to enjoy the story. I don't want to read through a book and worry about grammar issues. I don't want to read through a book and worry about technicalities. I want to get pulled into the cool characters and the cool moments. So I think that's a really good call out, Courtney. Hmm. I see what you guys are saying about third person omniscient. Let's see. Let me look that up. Third person omniscient. Yeah. So, and the difference with that, Eli, and let me actually speak to third person because I wanted to make sure that I was referring to the right one. So, third person omniscient is a narrative technique when the narrator has an all knowing perspective of the story and can access the thoughts, feelings, and motivations of all the characters. But Eli, here's the difference with third person omniscient as compared to head hopping. And I'll give you the perfect example. So in Megan's story that we just read, Megan started off with the narrator, as the narrator was omniscient, talking about it as a general. And then she transitioned into the characters thinking themselves. That's actually very, very common in writing. Very, very common. Now, if we are clear that the narrator is telling us the story, the narrator knows everything. And like that's fine. You're not going to struggle with head hopping because the narrator, we're clear that it's being led by the narrator. But If it is not third person omniscient, or the narrator pulls back and we're now in a character, then you're potentially getting, then you could be potentially led to get confused. You see, it's just two different styles of writing. And a lot of times third person omniscient will be combined with third person, or sometimes first person POV in some instances. But yeah, it just comes down to what style are you using. And if you're going third person omniscient, be intentional about that. If you're not doing omniscient, or if you're just going third person and hopping into the characters, be intentional about that. Yeah, and this is actually a really interesting point, because I see the point that both of you guys are making. During your, like, John wondered what Mary was thinking. Mary started to cry. Fine. Mary was feeling sad. What? How did he suddenly know? No, I see what you're saying, because it just in this specific example, it can come across confusing, because John wondered what Mary was thinking. Mary started to cry. Fine. Mary was feeling sad. What? How did he suddenly know? Because then it creates a jarring experience. Of then the reader asks, like, okay, well, how did, if this is John's perspective, how do we know what Mary's thinking? You're absolutely right. However, if this was a third person omniscient story, and the paragraph, the sentences that preceded this was like, John and Mary were intimate lovers. They were having the time of their lives until something happened and destroyed their happiness. John wondered what Mary was thinking, and Mary started crying. John thought that was fine, but Mary was feeling sad. Why? Why Mary wanted to know why she was feeling sad. Third person omniscient, that is a way to go about that, because we're clear that it's set up as the narrator's telling the story. But without third person, this one is just creating that confusion, right? So you see there's that distinction between the two. Thank you for sharing that. I think that was a good example for it. Yeah, Eli, I'm really glad that you bring this up, because I think narration style, and this is a writing technique that is very important to talk about. I think this is a great thing to have a discussion about. All right. So I hope that cleared it up for you. I know it sounds like both you guys were agreeing, but I hope that cleared it up a little bit. I think this is just telling me that I probably need to do a live stream. I probably need to do a workshop on this, or maybe either that, or maybe we can do something in the Discord, or I'll do a video, because I think head hopping or narration styles is an incredible thing to talk about. And both styles work. I think we just have to dive into why each style works, and then list clear examples where each one works. Because I agree with both your points, both styles can work, but you can't use, there's ways where you can misuse the styles. Absolutely. So I think, you're like, I think what mixes me up is that I come from a visual medium. I see my story as camera shots, and I'm not sure how to translate into writing without frustrating the reader. Right. And you see, that's actually very common for scripts. So anyone like working on like a graphic novel, screenplay, they end up seeing them a lot more visually like that. And then the focus is more on the dialogue, and then the description, since that it's more of a visual medium. And let me, I think the great thing is, because I know we've read some of your writing before. I think you actually do some of the things very well. I think it's just practicing. Like, okay, I see the visual shot of him shooting the wand at the thing. So then the question I ask myself is, when he shoots the wand at the bad guy, how would he feel? Now, once I know, does he feel afraid? Does he feel sad? Does he feel courageous? Cool. Now that I know how he feels, what is the best way that I can describe it? Do I want to describe it using like a metaphor? That'd be one way. Do I want to describe it by telling the reader, this is how he feels? That'd be one way. Do I want to describe it by using one of my senses? The way that he smelled something in the room. And you actually did a very good job using some of the senses. So I think it's just understanding it's trying to understand what the character perspective is, and then figuring out what is the right tool in that moment in the story to show that character perspective. But that's a really great call out. Awesome. Yeah, Eli, thank you for bringing that up. Let me drop the link for the Discord. So the Discord link is also down in the YouTube description, but I'll drop it down here as well. So for anybody who doesn't know, yeah, there's the Discord link. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So this brings me up to the next point. Right now on deck, Bobby, I actually have your story on deck. So Bobby, we're going to be doing your story, your memoir, Wildflowers, next, my friend. So I have your story on deck. But in the meantime, the Right Now Discord. So definitely come join us. We launched the Discord channel last week. And let me tell you, it has been such a cool experience. The fact that it's been active every day and there's like so many different conversations going on it, and there's so much opportunity is so cool. I've never used Discord as much myself personally, but seeing how much fun and how much value there is, plus how many other things there could be, is so cool. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat. It's also down in the YouTube description as well, but definitely go join the Right Now Discord, go join the community, and come join an active group of writers. So that way we can chat, we can connect outside of the live streams. Highly recommend. And then also recognizing that the Discord's only been live for about a week now, I'm going to keep adding on more and more layers to it. My ultimate goal is to create an to create an experience where writers can go there to meet different needs. Whether that is just want to procrastinate and talk about random stuff. I want to go talk about writing techniques. I want to go play writing games. I need help on a specific story, and so many more options. So that is the ultimate goal, to create an additional resource and tool that can help us with all the different facets of writing a book or writing a script or telling a story. So come join the Discord because it is awesome. And I will probably move my cadence towards adding new layers to the Discord on once a week. Once we get through probably on like Sundays, Mondays, as I'm kind of seeing how people interact with it and what people's needs and requests are for future Discords. So definitely. That'd be super cool. Awesome. So definitely wanted to highlight that. Excellent. So definitely you should come join us, Sela, if you haven't. Yeah, I literally just started adding it on today's stream. I was like, I need it. Now I have the Discord and all the descriptions moving forward. That's a really good call out, Eli. Something that has helped me with the same issue is realizing the character is like the sense organs of the reader. Imagine your brain is in a computer and you have no body. Cool, you're alive, but you can't do anything. So I try to make sure the character's experiencing the scenery actively somehow. Can be navel gazy too, though, so look out. Yeah, so essentially it's kind of like there's the logic side and then the emotional response side, so to speak. I think that's a good call out. Excellent. So, by the way, these are great conversations to have, by the way, guys. These are excellent conversations. I love the head hopping conversation. I love the narrative conversations. I just want to make sure that when I have them, as we do, that I can also make sure that I have specific examples, because I think these are really great things to talk about. When I'm in a place with my week to week, I'm going to move back towards doing probably some more writing workshop and some more writing workshop videos, because there's so many things I see writers do And my ultimate goal is to help you be a better writer. Learning from not just me, because I'm not perfect, I make mistakes as well, but learning from all the writers who come through the community so we can all improve and increase our likelihood of standing out when we publish our books so we can reach our goals. All right, beautiful, beautiful. So, with that being said, we're going to hop into Bobby's story, The Wildflowers Memoir by Bobby Preston. So, let me pull it up right now. Awesome. All right, beautiful. So, let's get into it. Let me pull it up now. All right, beautiful. So, we got Wildflowers, a memoir. Chapter 1, Letting Go. In church one day, with hands lifted high and tears streaming down my face, I finally, at the age of 30, decided it was time to let go of my childhood trauma. I had shared my story many times in hopes that telling it would help me let it go and let it be, but it just was not working. I finally realized true healing takes place when we lay our burdens down at Jesus' feet and do not pick them back up. So that is what I did. I vowed during my time of prayer that I would not pick it back up, but the ultimate true healing started to take place when I told my therapist one day, I'm ready to go. To which she smiled and said, Good. So I began the work of letting go. My first step was affirmations to speak over myself daily. I've been doing that for a week now and can tell a huge difference in my mood and self esteem already. My life is not as my life is not a bed of roses and sweet smelling perfume. My life is full of ups and downs. Letting go of the past is the upside to things. Holding on to it is the downside. Letting it control me is a downside. Being in control of it and letting the memories flow as they may and just being is an upside. I have learned that to truly heal, you have to sit in the pain for an extended time and just let your emotions be what they want to be or need to be. Letting my body and my mind feel the pain and hurt releases it. Letting my mind wander where it wants to is letting go of the pain and hurt. I finally decided to just sit a while in the pain and let the emotions come as they may. What a freeing feeling that is and was to give myself permission to feel the emotional and mental anguish I have been holding on to for 24 years. That's when I knew I was truly ready to let go. So, as I was at the altar during the altar call, I didn't care who was staring or what they were thinking. I was focusing on letting go and letting God. As the saying goes, I told God flat out, I cannot do this anymore. That's when the true healing started to take place. Painful as it was to sit there, sobbing my eyes out and crying out to God, I did it. I cried until my tear ducts were dry and my eyes dry and burning. Something miraculous was beginning to take place in my life. Do I still fall back on my childhood memories of abuse? Sometimes. Do I let it keep me stuck? Absolutely not. I refuse to let it keep me stuck any longer. I choose to live in the now from here on out until my dying day. All I know is I feel a freedom now that I have never felt before, and it is exhilarating. To be free means to be happy, truly happy. Thank God I am free, free from the abuse and free from the mental and emotional anguish it has caused me. I don't want to go into details of my past, but just know that God is working my life and it is for the better, for my good and his glory. At the age of 10 or so, I started to have memories of my abusive childhood. In the words of MLK, free at last. Thank God I'm free at last. Being free is a feeling I cannot explain. It's like I'm soaring in the wind, running wild and free. I am now truly in a happy place. A place I have not seen in 20 years. I feel a heaviness lifted off me, like it was a ton of bricks upon my chest. Bricks that finally fell and busted into tiny little pieces that I must never pick back up again. It's time to throw the old away and put on the new. There are too many things and details I do not want to share with you. But just know you are not the only one going through what you're going through. That's what I have finally had to learn over the last little bit. I finally had to learn that I'm not the only one who has ever been through what I've been through. That was hard and is a hard pill to swallow. It makes me have a lump in my throat just thinking of it. But that is something I have had to learn to let go of. I can't fix someone else's problems, only my own. But if you want to truly be free, I recommend praying and journaling your time with God. It will be a tool in your life to help set you free. The only way you will be free is if you work at it. You will find happiness, true happiness, once you are set free. Let Jesus set you free today. Do I still have my days where I sit and stir the pot on my past? Yes. Do I let it define me? Not anymore. Oh, I used to. A lot. I used to think that because of my past traumas, no one could truly love me. Then I met Glenna, my soon to be permanent mother. It was in church one night. She was being wheeled in by an older man up the ramp. She had a cast on her leg. I didn't know what happened to her, so I bravely wheeled up to her and asked her what had happened. She told me, and for some reason, I, being in a wheelchair myself, rolled away to another person to make conversation. I had long hair at the time. It was a red brown color. And of course, you see by the author pick and name on this book, I am a male. But she didn't know that at the time, so she just assumed I was a girl. Until I moved in with her on June 5th, 2001, and until I moved in with her on June 5th, 2001, and she started doing my catheterizations for me. Then she found out real fast what I was. We've always laughed about that story. Was funny to look back on as an older adult now. I just turned 30. Unfortunately, Glenna passed away a few years ago, but remains in my heart and in an urn in my room next to my bed. I spend some days physically aching because I miss her so much. I guess her loss was tremendous for me because I am the one who found her body 10 hours after she passed away. But that's for a later chapter. We met, and our love developed. And I knew I had met my match as a mother when I met Glenna. Little did I know that before meeting me, she'd broken her leg so severely that she'd never get to work again. This made her feel useless. In fact, that's what she put on the index card that night under the topic unspoken was I'm useless. To this day, that breaks my heart to think someone feels useless. Then she said it was like a light bulb going off in her head. She remembered having met me. She clearly felt God say to her, Glenna, I put Bobby in your life. They started the process the next day to get me placed with her and were denied. But 1.5 hours later, CPS called her and begged her to take me in because no one else could slash that would take care of my medical needs. And they knew of her past medical experience. She, of course, jumped at the chance. 24 years later, I still ask myself what she saw that made her fall in love with a child like me. And I still do not know that answer. And she has been gone for 4 years now. What could someone love about a disabled child that no one wanted? This is a question I've asked myself for 28 years now. What's so lovable about a disabled boy who is a waste of life, breath, air? What's so special? I still do not know that answer, but it must be something because she saw it in me and it clicked for her when she decided to take me in. When CPS placed me with her, it was supposed to be 60, 90 days at most. Those days came and went and nothing happened, meaning I hadn't been taken in from her. More days added up and still CPS hadn't come after me. They figured she was the perfect placement for me, so they left me with her. I was blessed to live with her for 19 years before her sudden death in 2020. It was right at the start of COVID. That came about in 2019. Mom died about a year later. It's kind of funny and kind of maddening, but a couple of years before her sudden death, she got life insurance and made the comment that I couldn't kill her for at least 2 years. How strange for her to have died right around that 2 year mark. I don't know if she knew then that she only had a couple of years left or what, but it felt weird to hear her say that. We, of course, chuckled at her remark because, as far as we knew, she was going to live for many more years to come, but God had other plans. I remember her passing just as if it were yesterday, and it's been 4 years. All right. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop that reading there. Their plans. So I want to make sure I have time to get to it. Wow. Oh my God, that was so emotional. That was so emotional. Bobby, first off, like that was incredibly emotional. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm kind of just in awe of it right now. So, wow. So yeah, so first off, thank you so much. Anytime that we start touching upon, anytime that we do memoirs and we start touching upon real life trauma, that is so difficult too. That's a very difficult topic. The reason being is because we have to figure out how to explore it in a way that feels authentic while it's still moving the story along. And that is always the challenge with memoirs. It's how are you framing the memoir in a way that makes sense for the story? Because a lot of the times, if people were to just tell you their life story, most people would fall asleep because life happens and like the craziness of life doesn't happen in a single day. It happens over long periods of time. And it usually a lot of time passes, as you will know, on the days between. So the difficulty with memoirs is how do I connect the dots in a story while painting the overall picture from point A to point B. Now, let me start with saying that I myself don't write memoirs. I've worked on memoirs for clients, but I myself have not written a memoir. So, with that being said, let's get into it because I still want to touch upon the character development and what you're going for. And I think it's definitely very, very brave. Awesome. And absolutely agreed with you, LeMay. Thank you for sharing your story with everyone. Hopefully people can find encouragement in your journey. Absolutely. And I think is yeah. During you have a fellow memoir writer now. So I would say overall, Bobby, I'd say what's working out really well of this. And let me just go back and check I want to make sure I didn't miss anything from your submission notes. Bear with me just 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So first off, and I had it listed on the link title, but Wildflowers is a beautiful name for a memoir. I absolutely adore that title. Wildflowers, beautiful name as a memoir. So I want to start with that. Now, as we get into the story itself, so I think obviously the character and the trauma. So the character with the memoir, the character development is our narrator, yourself, which is this experience. Usually what I tell writers is when we're doing the memoir, separate yourself from your experiences. Obviously, like if you're still unpacking and you're still dealing with things, that's one thing. But in the story itself, you want to be able to look objectively at your narrator because you need to be able to craft it as a story that has the emotional beats that readers can follow. And Doreen might actually have some. Doreen, you might have good recommendations as well, since I know memoir is right up your alley. So when I look at this, I definitely connected with your character. I connected with your story hands down. I definitely connected with it. And I could just tell from these different emotional beats that I was like, wow, he's gone through so much. I was like, that's so crazy. I think the biggest thing that's actually hurting this from a memoir perspective is just the structure, because I think the character development is actually really well done. And the world building is basically how are you painting the world of your story? It's much different than fiction. Fiction is how are we painting the world of the dragons and the monsters and the dungeons and all the things. Memoir, we know it takes place on the planet Earth. So the world is more what is your worldview? What are the things that are happening in your world in this part of the story that shapes your world? And I think your overall world, I think there might be an opportunity here or there, but I think the character is the strongest. Obviously, we're not really doing too much dialogue, so I'm not going to focus on dialogue. And then plot, since essentially the story is it's about the mother. I forgot. I wanted to make sure I got her name right. Glenna. So so the story is about Glenna, which means from a structural perspective, I ask myself, how are we going to set up the sections in a way so that way we can pull the reader into the story as much as possible while still leading up and building tension. Now, when I look at this, let's see. So the reason I said structure is the thing is because I think it just needs to be broken up into different sections, because you're kind of what you're doing is right now it's feeling parts of it are coming across like a journal entry, which is great. You can do it as a journal entry. There's actually nothing wrong with that. But if you do it as a journal entry, do it as a journal entry. Right now, if you're doing it as like a memoir, I would then break it up into sections or chapters or break it up into journal entries. It's completely up to you how you want to go about it. The great thing is you get to decide how the best way to tell the story is. The reason it needs to be broken up a little bit is because right now, since you're going from topic to topic to topic, from your like the life in the church, the Glenna moment, then you're talking about all these different cute stories. We need to have a little breakup so that way I know as a reader what is like the theme, or that I'm going to start experiencing. I'm going to start experiencing a single story in this moment. So then I know, okay, now I'm hopping to a next moment in the story, and this is going to be a next scene. Let's see. In church one day, finally at the edge of 30. And let's see, I remember I can do Christianity. I cannot do. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's like I think right now, from the story perspective, I think Christianity, the religious portion of it's integral to the character story. And I think that in this story, the Christianity and religion and God and Jesus and all that stuff, I think that's actually more world building. I think that's more world building specific elements, because that is how our narrator, that's how you look at the world. So I think that's actually a little less plot focused. It does obviously gives us character development as well, but I do think that the way it's being used now is more in world building. Let's see. So that was what I did. But the ultimate true healing started to fix. I told my therapist one day I'm ready to let go. To which she smiled and said, "Good." So I began the work of letting go. This is the thing. You have so many incredibly well written moments. Oh, which I absolutely love. You have so many awesome moments, my friend. Like you have some really excellent skills as a writer. And I think if you can structure it in a way, you can make them more impactful. And this is my example. So you say here, I told my therapist one day I'm ready to let go, which she smiled and said, "Good." As a side note, when we have two characters speak, I'm ready to go, to which said, which she smiled and said, good. To which she smiled and said, good. Anytime we have two characters speak, but I mean, technically you're talking about it in the past tense. I told my therapist one day I'm ready to let go. Okay. So if you ever have two characters speak, it generally needs to be two separate lines. Anytime a new character speaks is a separate line. But because you're telling it as part of a story, I think you would go like this because I don't think you're actually framing it as a speech tag. I think this is the way to do it. Like, don't Mark, I could be wrong. Like, I think this you should just look it up. The reason it is because you're technically the character. If this was the present moment and character A said, hello, character B said, how are you doing? Great. But because you're telling it as an entry, you're like, this day, that character said this, well, that character said that. That's not gonna, the same speech tag's not gonna apply. So I think you would go about it like this because the character is not actually in the present moment saying it. It's you, the narrator, telling how the character is saying it. It's removed. So I think this would be the way to frame that. So, all right. So with that being said, this is such a good moment. Told my therapist one day I'm ready to let go, to which she smiled and said, good. So I began the work of letting go. What happens though is my first step was, this is such a profound moment. When you go into this next sentence, my first step was affirmations to speak over myself daily. This profound moment gets lost because you keep going into another thing. But this moment is so profound. So to make it really stand out, this should be the end of this paragraph. You could always like lead into another paragraph or another section, but I think like this, yeah, so I think it would be, yeah, that would be my recommendation. So have this lead into the next paragraph. So that way the reader can really get to experience it. Okay. So I think okay, so that was that recommendation. So I've learned that to truly heal, you have to sit in the pain for an extended time and just let your emotions be what they want to be or need to be. Letting my body and my mind feel the pain and hurt releases it. Letting my mind wander where it wants to is letting go of the pain and hurt. So emotionally profound. You have a lot of these very emotionally profound moments, which is cool. My question is, what is this story? So I think this next story, I decided to just sit a while in the pain and let the emotions come as they may. What a freeing feeling that is and was, to give myself permission to feel the emotional and mental anguish. Yeah, so right now we're essentially going in, and I wanted to do this, prove another point. Some of our paragraphs, and this was similar to one of the past ones, one of the past readings. I think it'd be helpful to break up your paragraphs just a little bit. I want you to see what it will look like on a normal screen. So this is what it looks like right now. Some of these paragraphs a little lengthy, but once again, now let's see if I don't think, for some reason it's not letting me indent. It's being kind of weird right now. All right, there we go. This is my practice. So once again, like we what you want to do is you want to break up the paragraphs a little bit so that way you don't chance losing your reader, because readers can get eye soreness if there's not enough white space. Can you have long paragraphs at times? Absolutely, but we always want to make it as easy as possible to be a reader. So that's my other recommendation, splitting up your paragraphs just a little bit so you don't have these ones that are as long blocks of text, or like this one is like, right, that's almost what, like three, what's that? It's like almost like 3 or 4 pages where there's no breaks in between. right? So I think that would actually really help you. And what you want to do is you want to form the paragraphs, right? Because each paragraph is essentially expressing an idea that's forwarding the overall story. Mhm. And I mean, I think that's also a really good point. So during like journal entries are wonderful, but not commercial. When I was saying applies only if you want to have wide readership, that has to read like a novel. And that's absolutely right. And I think, Bobby, this is what you have to decide, right? If this is something like you want to publish as a memoir, then I would consider breaking up into like sections and chapters. But if you want this to just read like a journal, then like do it as a journal and be like, hey, this is dated chapter one, letting go, January 2020, right? And then do it more like a journal entry and then break up the chapters by like the dates. That could be a way to do it as well. So I think it's determining what type of style you want to go for. Perfect. And then, right, so you see what I would do here is I'm just going to break up these paragraphs just a little bit, right? So you see here, essentially what I've done, I finally decided to sit a while in the pain and let the emotions come as they may. What a freeing feeling that is and was, to give myself permission to feel the emotional and mental anguish I've been holding on to for 24 years. That's when I knew I was truly ready to let go. I would actually end on here to give myself permission to feel the emotional and mental anguish I've been holding on to for 24 years. I think that's very impactful. And then now we go back to him to our protagonist, our narrator at the altar. Perfect, because that's where we started at church. So so this first chapter is essentially taking place in church. So this is about this first section is essentially how the character is setting up how he's gone through this like deep emotional journey. And right now he's at church. The present moment is church. And then what I love about the writing is that then it starts going into abuse and how the narrator is so happy to be free of abuse. And I think that is such a let me just like iterate, such a beautiful thing to share and to experience with a reader. I think that is incredible to be free from abuse because there are so many people out there who are not free from abuse. And I think this type of storytelling can be so inspirational. Um, so what you want to do is I would actually end this. I'm free from the abuse and from the mental anguish it has caused me. And then you say here, I don't want to go into details of my past, but just know that God's working my life and is better for my good and glory. But the only challenge and I mean, this is interesting. Like, I don't want to go into details of my past, but technically, by writing the story, you're going into the details of your past. So I think it's more that you don't want to go into specific details, which is fine. So I honestly wouldn't even include that bit right there. And then what we do here is we kind of jump ahead. So we have at the age of 10, I started to have, so then we start going into a childhood memory. This means that now we're stepping away from the present moment so you can start exploring the past. I would actually end this section here. I would either make this chapter 2, or this doesn't necessarily have to be a new chapter if we're still exploring the same theme. Or this could be a page break, or this could be like a section break, like people do this all the time. You could always do that. Totally up to you, however you wanted to go about it. But this tells the reader, okay, so we're going to be hopping to a different moment or experience. Now, we're going to go to like a fly here. Oh, we're going to be talking about childhood. Awesome. So now we're going to go on an experience of childhood. And we're probably going to learn a little bit more about the abuse. So I think that's what I would do. And I think, Bobby, like you have some really great concepts here. And I think if you work on structuring it, if you and work on structuring it a little differently, and then you also break up the paragraphs, I think like this could be like a truly profound reading experience. It really could. So that's it was a red brown color, and I'll pick. Oh, something here. This was just a random note that came to mind. She told, and you're mentioning the author pick with Glenna. You said she told me, and for some reason, I being in a wheelchair myself, rolled away to another person to make conversation. I had long hair at the time. It was a red brown color, and of course, you see by the author pick and name on this book, I am a male. We live in a day and age where, especially with gender and identity and so many different types of ways for people to identify themselves. There are many people who are male. I think it's called like male appearing, or they might appear like a male, or they might appear like a female, and they're not. So, like, I love what you're saying here, which that's cool. I absolutely love what you're saying here. And of course, and it's this coming here. And of course, you see by the author pick and name on this book, I am a male. I think I wouldn't make that assumption only because identity in this current day and age and this current political climate um, isn't isn't quite so obvious. And especially myself, like I'm working in customer service for so long, like I can tell you there are so many people I met who looked like a guy and they were a girl, and vice versa. Maybe it was intentional, maybe they were trans, maybe they weren't, maybe it's something else. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, that's another good call out, right? Bobby, I met Bobbies who are male, I met Bobbies who are female, right? So then the name could be used either way. So I think I would just take out, of course. I think I would just reword this. It was a red brown color, and of course you see the often pick. You could go something else, like you could replace. It was a red brown color. Um, I would use like a different description because I think this is actually cute. I do like this. It was a red brown color. Um, or you could just go straight away like this. It was a red brown color. I am male, but she didn't know at the time, so she just assumed I was a girl. Like, oh, why? Like she assumed you're a girl. Like, okay, so that creates this moment of endearment of like, oh, now I want to know why does she think that he was that they considered our narrator a girl at that point in time. Yeah, I totally get that. I think it's just rewording the sentence more than anything. Because I could totally see a reader out there who likes to identify one way and then that totally putting them off because they're like, well, it's not obvious because I don't want to assume. So I'd say it's that more than anything. I would just reword it. Something that does that. Because like you could always say I am a male like this, but I feel like you could do something fun still and add something here cool that like still works. And something that still does little character development. So I would say that. And then what else? I just turned 30. Unfortunately, Glenna passed away a few years ago, but remains in my heart. And in an urn in my room next to my bed, I spend some days physically aching because I miss her so much. Mr. Loss was tremendous for me because I'm the one who found her body. God, that is so crazy. But you see, this so beautiful. This is such a memoir thing to do. Readers read memoirs because they want to experience true life stuff. They want to go on a journey with somebody who has gone through trauma and overcome it, or gone through some crazy life experience and overcome it, right? And you're like, I guess her loss was tremendous for me because I am the one who found her body 10 hours after she passed away. Like, that's traumatizing. That is absolutely traumatizing. But I know you mentioned previously in the story how there's also these things where you like escaped abuse. So there's so many different thematic elements that we really want to explore as readers. So going back here, but you said, but that's for a later chapter. Cool. All right. So we're going to do that for a later chapter. That's fine. And I actually kind of like that. And this is why I wanted to highlight it because this is kind of like, I guess her loss was tremendous for me because I found her body 10 hours after she passed. Now the reader's thinking of like, what happened? Tell me more. But then you're like, but that's for a later chapter. Now you're keeping the reader on the hook and you're using it as a foreshadow element. Great work. Absolutely great work. But to make this stronger and more profound, I would end the paragraph there. Now the reader's like, but that's for a later chapter. And they're like, ooh, now I have to read more. So I think I would end this paragraph here. Now, let's see, because I essentially think this is about Glenna, but this morning it'll be too on your, yeah, because then we go back to God and Jesus. Good. Then I met Glenna. Perfect. So then I would start that once we start talking about Glenna, I would actually make, because Glenna, because it's such a profound, like this is like an integral part of the story. Glenna should be the start of a chapter 3 or whatever you want to do, or the start of like a new journal entry, because it is so, so important. Since Glenna is such an important character in this story specifically, start a new section, a new chapter, because then it pulls the reader's attention to like, okay, then I met Glenna, my soon to be mother, chapter 4, whatever section, or journal entry 4, however you want to frame it. So I think that's how I would go about that. Awesome. And then we kind of get to go through the Glenna bit. And then, yeah, and then it just goes back to just breaking up the structure of like, okay, so this first chapter or whatever the section is, frame it around one story, one specific story, at least in this section. And then the next section, hop to the next story. That'd be my recommendation, because I can tell you're going from story to story, which is great. And in like a journal, if you were just journaling for yourself, that's fine. That's actually perfect. But from a reading experience, you need to be able to tie readers into what is the story and what is some type of emotional learning. What did you learn from the story, or what was your takeaway? And you have those things, which is great. You just need to structure it so it's a little clearer. Because once again, we just don't want a chance losing the reader. We want to create as easy a reading experience as possible. And then once again, so much of the things you have in here are so profound. And it's like, I genuinely think if you work on structuring this, if you end up with structuring and formatting it, like this thing's going to be incredible. So 24 years later, I still ask myself what she saw that made her fall in love with a child like me. And I still do not know that answer. And she has been gone for 4 years now. So it's kind of interesting. This actually makes me think that this is what the memoir is about. This makes me think that this is the theme of the memoir. That 24 years later, I still ask myself what she saw that made her fall in love with a child like me, and I still do not know the answer, and she has been gone for 4 years now. So then the question that the narrator is posing is, the question the narrator poses is, how could someone love me? It's actually an extension of self-love. It's a journey of self-esteem and self-exploration. So then the overall, and this is just a guess, I could be wrong, but my guess is the memoir follows the stories, obviously, of Glenna and of the beliefs and the narrator's stories throughout life and the things that have happened to them. Maybe a lot of them do happen to be around the mom. And it's really at heart, it's challenging how the narrator is learning about their self-esteem and their self-love through a story of trauma. And let me tell you, anybody who is human on the planet Earth has had to deal with self-esteem at some point in their life. So I think this is such a human element, and another reason why I think can be such a profound reading experience. I wanted to call it out because I thought that was very important. So I think that's why it feels like this should be the start of another section, personally. Awesome. And then with what we have coming up next, like I know we started going into more bits, but it's kind of like, that's kind of like the same type of feedback that I was giving. It just structuring, it's like paragraph structure and chapter or section structure are the biggest things. And then really thinking through like, okay, in this one section, what is the goal of this specific section? I want to tell a story and give them a theme and a takeaway. How did I learn from it? And then we pull back from the overall. So I think those are the biggest. Those are my biggest recommendations for this, Bobby. But yeah, that's all that I got for you. I really hope this helped. Once again, I'm so impressed by your journey. I'm blown away. And I just want to say thank you again for sharing. I really do hope and I look forward to you continuing to work on this and write this. And I hope to see how this evolves in whatever direction you want to take this. Whether this is just a journal for you and your loved ones, or whether this is like, okay, this is like a memoir. I want to publish this. I want the world to see. There's no right or wrong answer for this. So thanks so much for sharing, Bobby. That was really, really cool to experience. There's a couple of you guys who do memoirs in the community. I know Doreen, obviously you do. Another one of our regulars, Vaughn, does as well. I'm just always so impressed because like I don't do memoirs because I don't know how to write that type of material personally. I can do stories through dragons and fantasy because that's everything that I've known. I'd have to do a tremendous amount of research to be able to do it in a way that I think felt authentic to me. I completely agree. I love that. That's a wonderful theme and seems to really fit. Agreed. Awesome. But thanks so much. Thanks so much for sharing that, Bobby. That was awesome. All right, beautiful. So with that one up, if you're enjoying the stream, share it with a friend. Let help us grow the community. We recently hit that 500 subscriber milestone, which means that the next one is the road to 1,000. And I'm sure we'll get there at some point, but bring more writers to the community. The more types of writers we have here, the more types of story submissions, the more feedback you get on your stories, the more great conversations, the more varied perspectives, and just the more variety. So share this stream with a friend, smash that share button, and I appreciate you. All right. And with that being said, let's move right along. So I'm going to be queuing up for story number 4 is going to be our very own Miss Courtney Stephenson. Courtney, I got your story queued up for Falling for a Storm, contemporary romance. For those of you who were with us in a previous section, we get to see the tale of Lexi and Bash. And we're going to see the next section of where we left off with them. So Courtney, I'm going to hop into your story right now. I might do a little smaller section because I feel my voice starting to give way a little bit, but I really wanted to get another one in. So let's do it. Awesome. And bear with me just a second, guys, as I pull up the next one. All right. Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. I know. I know, Doreen, you're really excited. We've been going through different parts of Courtney's story. It's awesome. All right, perfect. And I just wanted to make sure that I had it queued up correctly on my end. All right, perfect. So, Courtney, I have you all set up here. So, let's see. So, without further ado, and let's get into it. Have I ever looked that happy? Even the way Bash held her to his side with such care is breaking my heart. I've never seen the smile he had in these pictures with her. His eyes have this light I've never seen. I found love letters also sitting on the top. They wrote to each other when I got some kind of words written on post-its. He was right. He did love her with his whole heart, and she looked to have loved him the same. Okay, cool. Sorry. I wanted to make sure that I was on point with where we had left off. So let me just pause for a second. So what I did, the previous section, we had gone through that letter We had gone through the letter, that's right, and she was unpacking the box. She had unpacked the box and she had read the Bash's last letter, which was actually really moving. And then she was unpacking the box, and I think she had found something in the box. Okay, cool. I needed to make sure that I was on point with where I was at in the story. Okay. Have I ever looked that happy? Even the way Bash held her to his side with such care was breaking my heart. I've never seen the smile he had in these pictures with her. His eyes had this light I've never seen. I found love letters also sitting on the top. They wrote to each other when I got some kind of words written on post-its. He was right. He did love her with his whole heart, and she looked to have loved him the same. I remembered his words while he laid in my arms, dying, how it was his karma. I cried for them both, and I cried for myself because I married a man that couldn't ever love me. Was I unlovable? Why did he even bother marrying me? We were perfectly fine living together. Why make me believe what we had was this perfect picture when it just wasn't? If he didn't die, was I not worth enough to have found my own love like this? Leaving the box, I go back into my office and grab the urn, stomping to the kitchen, slamming it down into the counter. I aggressively pour a glass of wine. So what if it's 10 in the morning? That was never too early for my dad. With a piercing stare, I look towards the urn, yelling, "How could you say that you loved me?" Whispering, "Will I ever be someone's first choice?" I feel so dirty and used. Closing my eyes, I hear Sebastian's words. "Never let this break you. You are still my fierce storm." Fucking selfish prick. Dropping my head into my hands, I start sobbing for the young girl that was never wanted. The young girl forgotten by my only living parent simply for daring to be born a girl. The young girl people always settled for. Damn him for being like everyone else. He promised. He said he would be different. Well, Sebastian Wolf, you are just like everyone else. A huge fucking disappointment. Forgetting the wine, I run upstairs, changing into some running clothes. I need to center myself again. When I run, I can just think better. And this small town allows me to get lost in my head. Choosing the route around town, I let my mind just go through everything. Should I do as he asked? I mean, it's his last wish. He fucked up and she died, but she had to have loved him before that accident, right? What if it was what she wanted to? If I'm doing this, then it will be for her, not him. No, that's not fair. I will do it for them and their love. Arriving back at the long driveway, finishing my run, I see that I've hit my weekly goal of 5 miles, and it's only Tuesday. Damn it! I shouldn't have gone running twice today. I knew today was going to suck. Taking a shower, I remember I left Sebastian in the kitchen. Crap! I throw on some shorts and a t-shirt, taking my long wavy hair in a messy bun on the top of my head, making my way to put Bash back to my office. Talking to his urn, I said, "I'm not an adventurous person, Bash, and you knew that. It was one of your biggest complaints." Did he compare me to her? No. I cannot do this to myself. Shaking my head, closing my eyes, and taking a deep breath, I clear those thoughts from my mind. I'll go tomorrow, and maybe while I'm in Charleston, I can go grab a sweetgrass basket and some stuff at the market for the author that has a book that is being released next month. Taking Sebastian back to my office, I put him back on the mantle. Then I hear my phone ring. Looking down to see it's my lawyer friend, Sarah. Then I hear my phone ping. Okay, then I hear my phone ping. Looking down to see it's my lawyer friend, Sarah, which I think then this is texting. This would be texting. Then I hear my phone ping, looking down. Okay. And then I hear my phone ping, looking down to see it's my lawyer friend, Sarah. "Hey, girl, how are you doing today?" "No, I'm here if you need me." Texting her back. Yep. Okay. "Thanks, girl. I'm okay. Processing Bash's letter." "You finally opened it?" she asks. "Yeah. Shocker. He planned another adventure." "I'm here if you need me, Lex." I know, give me time to process, I say. I make my way to the kitchen and make a late lunch, then grab a book from my library that I've been wanting to read. I'm just going to lose myself today. Forget the world. Oh, that was a chapter. Make my way to the kitchen, make a late lunch, then grab a book from my library that I've been wanting to read. I'm just going to lose myself today. Forget the world. Awesome. That was actually a really good excerpt. Hmm, Let me see. I was kind of going back and forth on continue. Okay, let's do like a couple pages. I want to go a little farther. Chapter 2, Lexi. Waking up, stretching my legs out, feeling sore from my extra run yesterday. When I open my eyes, I groan with how bright the sun is. Looking at the clock on my bedside table, I jump out of bed. Since when have I ever slept until 10? I head to my closet, trying to decide what to wear today, touching a sundress. I decide it doesn't feel right with my current mood. Instead, I grab some cut off denim shorts with a black racer tank top and some crimson red slip on Vans, making my way into the bathroom to take a shower and get ready for the day. Walking down the stairs, throwing my hair up into a ponytail, I glance out the bay window, seeing an old golf cart making its way down my driveway, confused. I unlock the front door, walking on the porch. I see it's Mr. Williams from next door. I rarely speak to anyone really, but he always tells me if I need anything to call on him. Everyone I've met has told me the same thing. The entire town seems to be grandparents looking out for little old me. Afternoon, Mr. Williams, I call out. Parking, Mr. Williams says. Girl, you doing okay? Debbie at the corner store said you wasn't out this morning on your run. I'm okay, Mr. Williams. I seem to have overslept, I say. You sure, girl? Looking at me, raising his eyebrow and tilting his head. I'm sure, sir. Girl, your eyes are still puffy. Don't lie. What's wrong? He demands. Feeling like I'm being reprimanded, I took a deep breath, closing my eyes to stop myself from crying. Yesterday was the first anniversary. Whispering, hoping he doesn't make me repeat it. I cannot be the widow always crying. I'm stronger than that. Well, damn, girl. The first year is the hardest. He took a deep breath and stared off into the distance. It don't get no easier, but that first one, yeah, about damn near kills you, he said, looking like he was remembering his own pain. Thank you for checking on me, sir. I appreciate it. Giving me a small smile, he just nods. No big deal, girl. We're a small town that sticks together. You just come over if you ever need to talk. The grandkids say I'm a pretty good listener. He pats my shoulder and heads back to his car, starting it and heading back up the driveway. Awesome. All right. And that is where I'm going to end that reading and on that beat. Excellent. Courtney, very, very well done. Another excellent submission. Oh, there we go. So what I really liked about that is I know we started, which was on technically on the back end of chapter 1, but it was actually a very strong ending for the first chapter. I can't tell how I feel about the beginning of the second chapter yet, but I mean it's doing a little bit more world building with kind of setting up with okay, this is how like the town reacts. Oh, and then we do a little character development with like, okay, she doesn't want to show herself or be like emotionally vulnerable. But then it ends up creating a moment of connection with the neighbor because he's like, don't bullshit me, young whippersnapper. So I think that actually does work, but I'm curious to see where it's going to go next because we know that Lexi's mission, right, is now she's going to have to go deal with Bash. Like we know that's the journey that she's going to have to take. So let's go back to where we started off here. So once again, character development is doing really well. Your character development with Lexi is doing very, very well. I think some of the opportunities, there's just you could probably use from some more descriptions in a couple areas and making a couple things a little clearer, or editing down on some. And I'll tell you why. It's actually kind of a mix of both. But I think the structure is fine. It's plot, I can't tell yet because we're still so early on, but plot from chapter 1 is good. Plot from the first chapter is really, really good. I know last time I touched upon the letters, and I think in this part, this is kind of we're dealing with how she's responding to the fact that the man that she loved that passed away was basically in love with somebody else or have like another person in their life. And how did she never know about it? Yeah, I think this is very emotionally impactful. Even the way Bachelor just said, I've never seen the smile he had in these pictures. And I honestly like this. It's good. I got some kind words written on Post-its. He was right. He did love her with his whole heart, and she looked to have loved him the same. I don't actually have any comments on that paragraph. That's very strong. I remembered his words while he laid in my arms dying, how it was his karma. Remembered his words while he laid in my arms dying, how it was his karma. I cried for them both, and I cried for myself because I married a man that couldn't ever love me. Was I unlovable? Why did he even bother marrying me? By the way, rule of thumb, don't do 2 questions back to back. If you're going to do questions back to back, do 3 if you're going to be intentional and you're specifically calling out a point. Only do 3 and this is why I go rule of 3s, do it if there's you have to prove a point of, okay, I want to use the same word 3 times, or I'm building up tension with 3 questions. The reason you generally want to stick to 1 or 3, but generally the reason you want to stick to 1 is because when you pose a question, the reader now has a question in their head, and now they're going to want to know the answer. If you pose a second question, it loses the value of the first question if they're asked back to back. Are there rules around it? Are there ways that writers can get around it? Absolutely. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say don't do 2 questions back to back. Would you rather have the reader asking, why is our protagonist unlovable? Or would you rather have our reader asking, why did he bother marrying her? I think the unlovable part is the stronger part. I married a man that could never love me. Oh, actually, because this one's kind of, did he even bother marrying me? Yeah, so what I would do is I would do this unlovable question because that's stronger. Lexi, and so I wonder leaving the box because you're not talking Lexi. I'm asking how I would frame that. I wondered why he bothered marrying me. Right. So I made it a statement instead of a question. We were perfectly fine living together. Why make me believe what we had was this perfect picture when it just wasn't? Why make me believe what we had? Why make me believe what we had? So it's actually kind of obvious that it's what they had. So why make me believe we had this perfect picture when it wasn't? Filler words. So we get rid of the filler words. So why make me believe we had this perfect picture when it wasn't? Cool. And if he didn't die, was I not worth enough to have found my own love like this? If he did not die, was I not worth enough? Double negative. If I did not die, so that means if I did die, I am worth enough. If I didn't die, was I not worth enough to find my own love like this? If I did die, was I worth enough? Was I worth enough to have found my own love? If I did die, was I worth enough to have found my own love? If he did die, if he didn't die, if he did die, was I not? So I always I'm not a fan of double negatives because they kind of essentially the double negative, they cancel each other out. It's essentially, so you're saying if he did not die, was I not worth enough? which is also saying, so if you're canceling those out technically, so you're like, if he did die, was I worth enough to have found out my love? So you're asking, was I worth enough to have found it out if he was alive? I go back and forth. It might just be that just could be a personal subjective thing though on my part, but just something to think about. I would say like consider reframing, but not a critical need right now. Leaving the box, I go back in my office and grab the urn. I love this character choice. This is an absolutely incredible character choice. Really, really great job. He's going straight to alcohol. Perfect. What a great way to show that our character is currently in the middle of having a breakdown beyond the fact that she's been crying her eyes out. Leaving the box, I go back in the office. Yep. And grabs the urn. I'm like, that's what an image. Leaving the box, I go back to my office and grab the urn. So this is an image I would recommend. Leave that sentence there because let that sentence stand for itself. Leaving the box, I go back in the office and grab the urn. Okay. Then what's happening next? Slamming it down on the counter. I stomp downstairs. I stomp to the kitchen. I stomp downstairs, downstairs to the kitchen. Kitchen. I stomp downstairs to the kitchen, slamming the urn on the counter. Slamming his urn. Yep, slamming his urn on the counter. Leaving the box. Yeah, so I mean, the formatting of the Google Docs is just kind of off right now. So don't heed that mind. But as like, where were we at? Leaving the box, I go back to my office and grab the urn. I stomp downstairs to the kitchen, slamming his urn on the counter. Perfect. Because then we know that the point of this paragraph is essentially the urn. I aggressively pour a glass of wine. So what if it's 10 in the morning? That was never too early for my dad. This is some great character. This is great character building right here. She is drinking in the morning and she's trying to minimize the fact of drinking in the morning and rationalize because her dad did it. It's all right for her to drink to numb the pain. So what if I aggressively pour a glass of wine? So what if it's 10 in the morning? That was never too early for my dad. The piercing stare, I look towards the urn, yelling. With a piercing stare, I look towards the urn, yelling. So with something like this, with a piercing stern, I think this would actually be stronger if instead of giving the setup, I look towards the urn. I don't think the stare is necessary because we know that she's drinking and she's very upset. So I think this actually be more powerful. Looking at the urn or glaring at the urn, I scream. How could you say that you love me? And we don't need that. Whispering. And I think an action in between here will actually make this stand out more. I fall. My back hits the wall and I slide to the floor. Whispering. Will I ever be someone's first choice? And I think this just makes it a little more impactful because then it is about her screaming at the urn instead of making it about the piercing eyes. So you see, it's just the subject of what we want the reader's attention to be focused on. Let me hop into the comments. I got into the reading. I felt more than one shows her. Okay, so we're on with the double negatives. I felt more than one shows her how low her self-esteem is, heightens her self-doubt. That's actually a great explanation of why. It's like playing on our natural desire to group things in threes or find value in groups of threes. I never really thought about that. Yeah, so for the double negative, I saw what you were saying. I felt so double negative. Like I said, I go back and forth. And the double negative, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It just might be a pet peeve of me personally. I try to point that out. But I'm like, once again, I'm of the mindset, make the reading experience easy. Make the reading experience easy. If I get confused by something, people out there will get confused by it as well. That's actually a great explanation. Oh yeah, rules of threes. The rule of threes is a really great technique if you're really trying to make something stand out, whether you're spreading it out over the course of a chapter, a book, or a scene or a paragraph. Mhm. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, I know. I was mumbling. I was trying to make sure that I understood it. I mean, like if Bash didn't die, that picture perfect love wasn't something she would ever experience. You're right. And at this point in the story, though, we don't know that quite yet. We haven't really been given enough information because we're still so early on in the story. So right now, if Bash didn't die, that picture perfect love wasn't something she would ever experience. That's true. Clearly, that's a truth. But from a reading perspective, the reader doesn't know that yet. For all the reader knows, if Bash didn't die, they could have had the most magical relationship ever because we don't know that much about Bash yet, except now we know, oh, he was in love with somebody else. Bastard. That's all we know. But before you had set him up of like, oh, cool, good guy. Oh no, he cheater. So now we're at like, we don't know how to feel because our narrator is emotionally unreliable in this current point in time. So right now, what would have happened if Bash didn't die? Debatable. Thanks for sticking with us, Doreen. We appreciate you. Yeah, I would say you guys made some good recommendations for the glaring at the urn. Yeah, it's like, and once again, guys, this is a subjective thing. There's probably 1,000 ways you could reword this. This is just something that makes sense for me. As if because I'm thinking about what is the moment of the character. The moment is really about that we're focused on the urn, but it's kind of about how she's feeling in response to the urn. The urn is just a representation of Bash. So it's how is she feeling about Bash? And then I just added extra action that adds to that feeling of her breaking down. That was just an example. Whimpering's action. My back hits the wall and I slide to the floor, whimpering. Ooh, I actually like whimpering's better. Ooh, good call out, Sparky. Thanks for that. Whimpering. I think whimpering actually works better. Mhm. Awesome. So that's what I had for that. He said it'd be different. Well, Sebastian Wolf, you're just like everyone else. This is great. This is actually absolutely great. He said he would be different. Very well, Sebastian Wolf. You are just like everyone else. A huge fucking disappointment. And this is another example of cutting down necessary words. A huge fucking disappointment. Sure, huge, but we accomplished the same exact thing. A fucking disappointment. And we get to cut down on wordiness. He said he would be different. Well, Sebastian Wolf, you are just like everyone else, a fucking disappointment. I almost think that this might actually be more impactful if you made this dialogue. And this is once again another subjective, but I kind of feel like he said he would be different. Um, well, Sebastian Wolf, you're just like everyone else, a fucking disappointment. Maybe adding a little action, maybe adding one like action tag to that. But I think that would be more profound, but just kind of a subjective comment. And then we go back to running, choosing the route around town. I let my mind stuff just go through everything. Try to do as he asked. I mean, it's his last wish. So, and this is something to think about. This is the first time that we're going into town now with the character in the present moment of the world. Do we want to have, if she's going on a run, do you want to use any description to explore the town that she's in? I don't know if she stays in the town the whole story or if she leaves the town. Something to think about. If a lot of Lexi's core story is going to stay in the town, then maybe you might want to do some type of like add in like 1 or 2 descriptions of things that she passes by on her route, so we get additional world building of the town that of her town that she lives in. If it's just a stepping stone and the journey is she's going to go on a road trip, not that bad then. Yeah, and Eli, you bring up a good point. The question I always ask myself, and this is the editor side of me, is if I'm editing, if you can take out a word, does it still have the same impact? Yes, take out the word. No, keep the word. It's literally as simple as that. A lot of times we as writers like to use filler words for a lot of things. I think that's an example of it. Ooh, she never drinks the wine. She pours it, but she poured it aggressively, but you're right. She never actually drank it. I almost like wonder if like then even at the end of this, you're right, because she doesn't actually drink it. And I was like, I know I added the action of her like sighting down the wall. That doesn't have to happen. But I think then if you end it of Lexi slammed the overflowing glass of wine on the counter and stormed off. I think because that's right. You said forgetting the wine. Forgetting the wine. Like forgetting the wine. Yeah, because I mean, technically, she hasn't taken a drink out of it. That accomplishes the same thing. Getting the wine. Lexi slammed. So essentially, she poured the glass of wine. She left it on the counter, and then she just started cussing out the urn. So okay, I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I think that could work either way. In all honesty, that could work either way. I skipped the part of the prologue that describes the town. Perfect. You already got the town. But this was my challenge that I'd of course I'll read the prologue absolutely, but I think when you can find moments to add little descriptions about the town that you haven't shared yet, helps to add to the reading experience. So like if you did like a huge like paragraph or like half the first prologue was about describing the town, then I would break it up so you don't do all the description in one place. And her going on the run seems like a moment for how does she view the town when she's in distress, but it's not necessary. This is another subjective thing because right now her experience is about her upset with Bash, and you're kind of focused on this bit. So I'm not too concerned about that comment specifically. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what it is, Courtney, is I think just make it clear. I think that's the thing more than anything. Make it clear that she doesn't drink the wine. And the way to make it clear, do some type of action where maybe she throws the wine glass, maybe she sets it down and it spills over, um, throws it at the urn and the urn wobbles and doesn't tip over. You could do anything. I would just say make it clear then that she doesn't drink it. Because you say forgetting the wine, but forgetting the wine doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't drink the wine. So just something to think about. Yep. Suddenly is definitely an overused filler word. Absolutely. 9 times out of 10, you don't actually need suddenly as a word. Why would you? And this is like a random thing, but like suddenly this happened. Why say suddenly? Just say that the thing happened. It's we love to use suddenly as a very highly used filler word. You can love with me, but it's not really fair. I mean, you wrote it. Like, I don't know if the word suddenly really needs to be in my writing at all. With all filler words, there are times and places to be able to use it. What would be a good example of using suddenly? She, let's see, the girl. The girl screamed at the appearance of a spider. The girl screamed at the sudden appearance of a venomous spider. At the appearance. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. And that could be it. It could be if Courtney was going in that direction, using it, the forgetting of it as foreshadowing. Awesome. Choosing the route around town. I let my mind go through everything. I touched upon that. I knew today was going to suck. Taking a shower. I remember I left Sebastian in the kitchen. This is funny. I knew today was going to suck. Taking a shower. Remember I left Sebastian in the kitchen. Crap. I throw in some t-shirts and for her to run back to the office. Okay, we're just going forward. Talking to Zorn, I said, I'm not an adventurous person, Sebastian. No, I cannot do this to myself. All right, so we're forwarding that she's deciding she is going to make a trip tomorrow into town. And then, hey, taking Sebastian back to my office, I put him back on the mantle. Then I hear my phone ping, looking down to see it's my lawyer friend, Sarah. Hey, girl, how are you doing today? No, I'm here if you need me. Okay, then I hear my phone ping. Looking down, I see it's my lawyer friend, Sarah. I have to think about this. I actually don't know what is the right formatting for texting. I have to check that. What is a way to format texting in a novel? Yeah, so I mean, I just did a quick Google search, and I think that, and this is just based off an initial Google research without not much research, which is totally, and I think making it easy, Courtney, with texting, I would just do, I would italicize. Italics is an easy way to say, and I mean, you could do it a couple of different ways, right? You could just do italics. Then I hear my phone ping, looking down to see my lawyer friend, Sarah. You could either say the text reads, she starts texting, the bubbles. Nah, that puts it. I just say the text reads. Hey girl, how are you doing today? No, I'm here if you need me. And I think that's how I would frame it. And then thanks, girl. I think once you establish its text, you should establish texting here. And then the rest of this can literally just be back and forth, because then it's clear that she's texting back and forth. And then I don't actually even think that you need the dialogue tags, because, well, technically, if she's texting it, she's not speaking it. Texting is, so then you literally couldn't have a dialogue tag. That could potentially create confusing. You could add a tag, but you can't say, I mean, you could say she asks. Yeah, you could say she asks, but you can't say that she says, because she's not specifically saying it. You finally opened it. Yeah, shocker. You planned. Yeah, and I think this works because it's texting for this. I think that would be fine. Cool. Awesome. As long as you're aware of it. Perfect. Chapter 2. So what we did was we started off with the neighbor. Everyone I met has told me the same thing. The entire town seems to be grandparents looking out for little old me. So now slept until 10. So I like how you start out with Lexi I like how you start out with Lexi. She's starting the day and clearly her schedule is off. She's calling out how her schedule is different. And then the interaction with her neighbor, Mr. Williams, is actually a really good interaction. This is actually a really good moment for them. Because obviously she doesn't want to deal with him. And Mr. Williams is kind of like, he's just an older individual, and he's very like, come talk with me and I want to hear your problems. He's probably retired, My guy, I think I forgot. Walking down the stairs, I glance out the bay window, seeing an old golf cart. All right, yep. So old golfer, probably retired. Cart making its way down my driveway, confused. I unlock the front door. I see it's Mr. Williams. Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So he basically, I don't know why I missed that on the reading. Maybe because it was live. But so basically, he drives up in the golf cart, pulls up onto her driveway to check in on her because Lexi is clearly a creature of habit and probably goes on the same exact run every single day. All right. So this is what we're doing right now. So everyone I've met has told me the same thing. The entire town seems to be grandparents looking out for little old me. All right, guys, hold on. I have to deal with our pet. Give me just a second. All right, I'm back. So everyone I've met has told me the same thing. The entire town seems to be grandparents looking out for little old me. This is great. Great character development. Really, really good character development. I absolutely loved that. Afternoon, Mr. Williams. I call out parking. Good, good. I think what I like about this scene is that this she's basically being forced to confront this sadness, this anniversary in somebody else's presence. It's a level of uncomfortability that nobody in her situation wants to experience around other people. I do actually kind of like that. It forces our protagonist into an uncomfortable situation. This is very early on. He's coming at it from a place of caring. And it kind of shows that she's a nice person, which I actually do kind of like. Why doesn't she just say like, "Hey, screw off. I want to go. Leave me alone." She doesn't. She ends up responding, which does shows character development, actually shows us who she is. And that's why I actually really like this moment. Um feeling like she's being reprimanded. I think the only thing with him is I would just give Mr. Williams a sentence of description. What does he look like? I just need beyond. I mean, he's a golfer. Obviously, he's older, but like I have no clue what he looks like. Is he like bald old retired dad next door or like yeah, so just give me a little description on him. But yeah, overall though, yeah, I would say that's kind of all most of the feedback that I have for you, Courtney. Hopping into the second chapter, I can tell that yeah, it's definitely improving overall, and I'm sure it probably keeps improving in style over time. But a lot of the things that I'm seeing are probably more like editing things that are going to have to be fixed. A lot of it's going to be cutting down on wordiness. I'm not seeing too many issues with the core story. So far, the core story seems pretty sound, but that's just from what we've read so far. I'm definitely looking forward to diving into it. I think that's going to be super cool. I think, um, yeah. So I think what we've gone over today, there were just a couple of points to touch on, but I think there's definitely going to be a lot of really good examples of cutting down on wordiness and phrasing things in a certain way so you can still get the same point across with less words. Exactly how we went about the wine. What was that? That wine bottle moment or the urn moment, like things like that. So I think that was really cool. Thanks for submitting that, Courtney. That was super awesome. And I can tell the community is really liking it as well. Absolutely. So thank you again, my friend. Ah, awesome. Obviously, you're not a golfer, Jeff Lebowski. Mhm. It's good, better than I thought this genre could be. It's such a fucking sad setup that I don't know if I'd be able to get through that, but I'm glad to get to experience it in this other way. I know because it's a different type of reading experience, right? Where dealing with a character who is essentially dealing not just with a character's death, but is going to have to go on a whole journey of some type of self-exploration when finding out that not only is it the character's death, it's the idealistic death of her perception of who she thought the character was. So it's a whole journey, and you'll never know because the character's dead unless they left notes or letters behind, which go about it like that. But there's a finality with how do you explore something when a character is dead already? And sometimes there's going to be questions left unanswered, or maybe they'll find a way to answer the question. So definitely really, really cool. She has a dog that's a favorite character. That's awesome, Courtney. That's absolutely awesome. Play into the crowd favorites is what I say. Absolutely, especially if you end up writing more books as part of the series or whether it's just a standalone. Ah, all right. Awesome. And on that note, we made some excellent progress today. So, as I look towards creative writing on the morrow, Freaky Friday competition. Submission deadline is tomorrow. Tomorrow is your last day to submit a flash fiction piece for the competition. Tomorrow, the deadline, 5 p.m. Pacific, 5, 6, 7, 8 p.m. Eastern. Submit it. The submission link down in the YouTube description down below. So definitely, we got some good competition, and we'll be revealing the finalists on Wednesday. On Monday stream, we're going to be announcing a cool surprise for the fiction contest. So definitely make sure you're joining us on Monday for our announcement stream. And then tomorrow, so no podcast tomorrow. I need to get work done on Last Scarecrow. Yeah. So plan a writing stream. I might do something fun. I'm not sure if I'm in the mood or if I'm going to have the energy more than anything to set up a specialty stream. Maybe we'll see. But regardless, I'll be back probably around 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for some more writing shenanigans. And if you're looking for something to watch next, down in the YouTube description is the Reading Sprints for Storytellers. It's just a combination of our most popular playlists. So if you want to listen to more stories, go check it out. Like I said, over 160 stories that we've done on this show. There have been some phenomenal stories. Or maybe you want to read some previous excerpts from some of the stories we read today. So go check out those episodes. Definitely a good experience. And don't forget, like the stream on your way out. Tap that like button. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. All right, my friends. It has been an absolutely great stream. Courtney, thank you. ML, thank you. Eli, glad to have you in here. Sparky, welcome to the community. Tap that follow button. That way you'll be alerted because I stream every day. So we're here every single day. Glad to have you in here, my friend. And Tiara, glad to have you here. Let's see who else. LeMay, awesome as always, my friend. And many other friends along the way. Thank you all for joining us. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.